Josh saw a white pillar rise beyond the mountains. It looked solid, like a tower made of light. His autopilot died as the cockpit filled with glare. Then 42 minutes vanished from the recorder. Josh Rainier is a captain with 14 years flying. He knows Colorado skies and quiet mountain routes. On April 19, 2023, he flew. A Cessna Caravan carried passengers toward Durango. The weather stayed clean and calm at first. At 7:47 p.m., at 13,500 feet, Josh saw something that broke every rule he trusted. A vertical beam stood in the distance. It rose from ground to thin air. It did not flicker. It did not fade. It waited. Josh kept the nose steady and watched the horizon. The beam stayed perfectly upright. It looked wider than a building. It looked narrower than a storm. It felt placed. As they closed within 10 miles, the plane changed. Autopilot clicked off by itself. No warning tone helped him. The controls turned heavy. The yoke resisted like thick syrup. Josh tried trim and power. The plane obeyed, but slowly. He felt drag with no wind. He felt pressure with no turbulence. The air looked clear, yet it felt crowded. Within 5 miles, instruments began to lie. The attitude indicator rolled in circles. Altitude jumped up and down. The compass spun clockwise while they flew straight. Even the cabin lights dimmed, then returned. Josh called air traffic control. His radio hissed with clean static. A thin tone rode under the static. It matched the beam rhythm in his eyes. He tried the second radio. The same result. Then the cockpit flooded with white. Not sunlight, not lightning. A uniform glare that erased edges. Josh could not see the panel. He could not see the windshield frame. Only white and pressure. A thought pressed into his mind. Climb. Go higher. Enter the light. It felt calm and final. It did not feel like his own thought. Josh fought it by routine. Hands on yoke, eyes on memory, breath measured. He lowered the nose slightly. He held speed. He refused the climb. The white held for a short stretch. Then it snapped away. Dark normal sky returned at once. The beam was gone. The instrument steadied. The controls felt normal again. Josh looked at GPS and felt cold. They were south of their route. They had passed Durango by 20 miles. They felt only minutes had passed, but the cabin clock did not agree. After landing, Josh expected a normal debrief. Instead, the timeline looked damaged. He requested the cockpit recorder. The file ended early. A long blank span sat in the middle. No hiss, no corruption, just clean absence. 42 minutes were gone. Flight data made it worse. Actual flight time read 81 minutes. Engine logs showed 62 minutes. That gap did not match any failure Josh felt. No alarms, no emergency call, no record of a shutdown. The GPS track showed a discontinuity, a smooth line, then a jump. The aircraft appeared 20 miles past Durango, as if a slice of sky was missing. Josh asked maintenance to pull fault codes. They found none. No voltage spike, no avionics fault stored. Yet Josh clearly remembered autopilot dropping. He remembered the yoke turning heavy. He remembered instruments spinning. He requested ATC audio. Controllers logged a loss of contact longer than Josh perceived. They reported position updates that did not match. Then the plane returned to radar as if it rejoined the network. Josh listened to the seconds before the gap. Static thickened. Instrument tones rose. Then silence. He listened to the first seconds after. He heard his own breathing, fast, shallow. Then his voice repeated one sentence. It still has not landed. It still has not landed. It still has not landed. Josh did not remember saying it. The words sounded like a loop, not panic, not conversation, a warning spoken through him. He tried to reconstruct the missing span. He wrote a minute-by-minute statement. Beam, whiteout, pressure to climb, then a hard cut in memory. Nothing would fill that blank. By the end of the day, Josh held one conclusion. The event was not a glitch. Something removed time from the record and left his voice behind as proof. Josh could not accept a blank span as the ending. He drove back into the mountains alone and followed the GPS line until roads turned to dirt. The valley felt sealed off. Radio stations would not hold. A thin tone kept riding under the static, steady enough to feel intentional. He found the ring where the forest seemed to avoid the center. Pines formed a loose circle. Their trunks were scorched on one side. The burn lines ran straight and vertical, like a flat wall of heat passed through. Inside the circle, bark looked wrong. Inner layers had melted and rehardened into a glass-like crust. The soil at the center was darkened and stubborn. Grass refused to grow. Josh set his phone to record and stepped into the ring. His ears popped. A soft pressure built behind his eyes. The humming returned, climbing into his jaw and teeth. He felt a brief nausea, like two motions disagreeing. A pale light bloomed above the ring. Then a smooth disc-shaped craft hovered 20 feet up. No seams, no windows, no exhaust. It did not drift. It did not land. Josh understood the sentence again. It still has not landed. A sheet of light dropped from the craft like liquid glass. It touched the soil without disturbing dust. The air inside the ring went too quiet. Insects stopped. Wind and branches seemed paused. Josh tried to step back and felt delayed, like moving through deep water. The sheet swept across him. Cold, intimate, a scan. His mouth would not form sound. His eyes kept returning to the craft. When the light passed his face, the pressure behind his eyes sharpened, then eased. Images formed inside his mind. Measurements, contours, points on a grid. The valley rendered as data, trees as markers, rock as geometry. Then his body reduced to a moving dot. A message arrived without sound. System survey, terrain, vegetation, life. Human is one data point, only classification. But the scan did not end when the light withdrew. Josh still felt the hum inside his teeth. His heartbeat stayed locked to an invisible rhythm. He looked at his hands and they seemed slightly late, a fraction behind his intention. He tried to blink away the afterimage. A faint circle lingered in his vision, not light, more like an outline pressed into his eyes. When he looked at trees, their trunks seemed to hold vertical grid lines for a second. When he looked at the ground, he sensed distances without measuring. He lifted his phone. The screen brightness changed by itself. The camera app opened without his touch. For a moment, the lens pointed upward. Josh forced it down and the hum tightened. He held the phone still until the hum softened again. He realized the craft had touched more than his body. It had left a rule inside him. Look, record, confirm. The disc remained hovering, silent. Then it vanished without travel, like deletion. Forest sound returned in a rush. Josh checked his phone. The timestamp jumped. His audio memo held a clean gap, then his own breathing, then the sentence again. It still has not landed. Josh stood at the ring edge, unsure how long he had been there. He felt watched, even with the sky empty. The hum faded, but the rhythm stayed. Josh kept flying, but something stayed with him. He hears the thin tone in quiet moments. He keeps receiving reports from other pilots. Different routes, same description, a pillar, a whiteout, a missing span that no device can explain. Some nights, he wakes with the sentence on his tongue. It still has not landed. He does not know what it is waiting for. Tell me what you think happened in that missing span, then like and subscribe. There is a very specific time when Route 54 becomes lethal, 2:11 a.m. If your radio cuts out, your GPS dies, and your phone connects to 911 by itself, don't bother hitting the brakes. They've already found you. If that unsettled you, wait until you hear what happened at exactly 2:11 a.m. Leona Ward was a 911 operator in the quiet, isolated town of Santa Rosa, New Mexico. The town's official population stood at 2,744, a figure that felt generous on most days. For 12 years, Ward had mastered the familiar, often comforting rhythm of the desert and the deep silence of the graveyard shift. She recognized the voices of the local farmers, the teenagers pulling harmless pranks, and the lonely elderly residents seeking reassurance. She knew her routine, her town, and her job. Santa Rosa existed primarily as a necessary pit stop on Route 54, the kind of place travelers only glanced at. They would fill their gas tanks, grab beef jerky and a Coke, use the facilities at the Love's truck stop, and then immediately vanish back onto that endless ribbon of black highway. Route 54 was a north-south artery cutting through the desolate desert, linking Tucumcari to the north with Alamogordo to the south. Most of the territory it traversed was empty land, stunningly beautiful in the harsh light of dawn, yet utterly devoid of human presence, and profoundly lonely. Ward insisted she wasn't crazy, despite questioning her own sanity countless times. She was compelled to recount everything that had happened, detailing the terrifying, precise pattern that began exactly at 2:11 a.m. The beginning of the nightmare was the transition from Thursday night to Friday morning, March 14, 2019. Ward was seated at her console, anticipating the usual quiet inertia of the early morning hours. At precisely 2:11 a.m., her headset exploded with sound. It wasn't the sound of a bad signal or typical cell interference. It was a dense, heavy, unnatural static, a sound so saturated it felt physically palpable, as though the caller was trapped beneath tons of water or broadcasting from a distant, vibrating star. The sheer wrongness of the sound sent a shiver down her spine, raising the hairs on her arms. Piercing this sonic wall was the desperate, trembling voice of a young man, Michael Valdez. He claimed he was driving his gray 2015 Honda Civic on Route 54 and was being pursued by lights in the sky. The terror in his voice was not manufactured, it was raw, primal fear. Valdez reported a complete systems failure. His radio, GPS, and cell phone were dead, yet somehow, miraculously, the 911 line had connected. He sounded like a man drowning in technological isolation. The data screen offered no comfort. Ward's console remained stubbornly blank. No coordinates, no tower triangulation, no incoming log nothing to anchor the call in reality. She could hear his panicked breathing, the frantic details of his vehicle, and his increasing desperation. He described seeing shapes within the pulsing light and screamed for immediate help before the line instantly went dead. There was no fading, no clicking, just an instantaneous, complete severance of the connection. Ward dispatched Officer Ruben Marquez. While waiting, she checked her logs. The horrifying reality sunk in. Her system showed no record of the call ever being placed. The only remnant was an automated recording file that, chillingly, was exactly 8 seconds long and contained nothing but the heavy, underwater static. The 4 minutes of desperate conversation she had just experienced had simply been erased from the system's memory. At 2:34 a.m., Marquez reported back. He had found no sign of the Honda Civic. The highway was desolate, just as it usually was at that hour. The final, unsettling confirmation arrived hours later from the Albuquerque police. Michael Valdez was safely home, having been asleep since midnight. His gray Civic was cold and dusty, confirmed not to have been driven for days. Valdez had been at his residence, yet Ward knew with absolute certainty that she had heard a more perfect echo of him screaming into the void on Route 54. Officer Marquez later confided in Ward. Though he initially dismissed it as an atmospheric anomaly, what he saw at 02:45 a.m. near mile marker 290 was impossible. He described an intensely bright white light hovering miles off the highway. It did not drift or accelerate. It abruptly teleported a significant distance south. Then, with an acceleration that defied all known physics, faster than any fighter jet or space shuttle launch, it shot straight up into the black sky and vanished. Marquez, a man whose professional credibility was everything, was visibly shaken by the impossibility of the sighting. The silence that followed the Valdez incident lasted 3 weeks, but for Ward, it was merely an anticipation. The dread became reality on April 4th at exactly 02:11 a.m. The headset erupted with the exact same, uniquely terrifying dense static. This time, the panicked voice belonged to Sarah Baker. She was also on Route 54, and her terror was fueled by recognition. She mentioned seeing the news story about the other people, indicating the phenomenon was already known in hushed rumors or local reports. Sarah described a massive object hovering directly above her blue Ford Escape. The object was enormous, not a plane, emitting pulsing red and white lights. She detailed a visceral sensory assault, a deep, powerful humming sound that didn't just rattle the car, but vibrated through her body, causing excruciating pain in her teeth and bones. It was a physical violation transmitted through sound. She then whispered that she saw something opening up beneath the object, revealing a blinding white light, and within that light, dark shapes, too tall, too thin, confirming her deepest fear. They can't be human. The line cut out instantly. The outcome was identical. Sarah Baker was later confirmed to be safe at home in Las Cruces, her vehicle in her garage, having never left. The call log remained blank, and the recording was 8 seconds of static. The pattern was sealed. In the following months, their 02:11 a.m. calls continued. Ward logged them mentally, knowing her system wouldn't retain the evidence. The victims were found safe at home, yet their cars were discovered abandoned on Route 54. Ward knew these people had been subjected to something traumatic and invasive. They were safe, but deeply tampered with. The authorities began to focus on the vehicles themselves. The most chilling commonality was the ritualistic evidence left behind. The abandoned cars were always found centered and perfectly framed within a perfect triangular shape, formed by 3 large, circular, thermal burn marks etched into the asphalt. These scorch marks were meticulously spaced approximately 47 feet, about 14 meters apart. Forensic analysis confirmed the pavement beneath the car was still warm, indicating the powerful thermal energy had been focused and released just moments before the car was left behind. This geometric precision ruled out natural phenomena or any conventional explanation. It suggested a controlled, measured operation, a harvest, a retrieval, or a signal. By December 2025, 2 years after the initial incident, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Leona Ward was no longer a lone operator dealing with an anomaly. She was the central, critical component of a joint task force comprising the FBI and the New Mexico State Police. Her dispatch office was now a field command post, equipped with specialized surveillance and recording devices. The mission was clear: intercept the next event and secure evidence. The tension in the office was almost unbearable. Tonight is Saturday, December 6th, 2025. The clock shows 2:08 a.m. Only 3 agonizing minutes remain until the expected time of contact. FBI agents are stationed silently in the adjacent room, monitoring multiple feeds. Recording devices are active and being double-checked. A fully prepared response team is standing by directly on Route 54, strategically positioned and ready to move. Ward's hand is firmly on her headset, her notebook open and her pen poised. She had stopped feeling fear long ago. Now, there was only determination. In 3 minutes, Ward will find out if all their preparation is enough. She is the nexus point, the only reliable constant in the phenomenon. The truth they seek is about what has been taking people off the highway, what has been utilizing their 911 dispatchers as a means of communication, and what has been deliberately leaving those perfect triangular burn marks a signature in the desert. The clock reads 029. The entire fate of understanding this phenomenon rests on the next 120 seconds. Ward concludes her account with the same chilling professional warning she issues to the task force. Route 54 between Santa Rosa and Vaughn is a kill zone at 2:11 a.m. If you are there and your GPS fails, your radio cuts to static, and your phone connects to only one number, 911. We will hear you. We will document your call. We will send help as fast as we can, but the question remains, are we ready for what happens next? This testimony you are listening is my attempt to bring the truth of Route 54 out into the light, and I need your help to keep it visible. If you find this information compelling, if you believe this phenomenon needs to be investigated further, please hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, and share your theories in the comments below. Your support ensures this message and the patterns we uncover can't be easily silenced. Late Tuesday night in the West Texas oil fields, Dalton Ridgway pulled up to Pump 7, expecting nothing but the familiar chug of machinery and empty darkness. Then his electronics died, the air turned razor cold, and a perfect ring of blue-white lights appeared in total silence 50 feet away. 2 minutes later, it vanished, and Dalton realized he hadn't just seen something impossible, he had lost 9 minutes of his life. The story of Dalton Ridgway, a gritty, wary 42-year-old oil worker, unfolds in the deep, unyielding solitude of the West Texas oil fields. After 7 years navigating the endless black grid of Kalashi roads, Dalton was accustomed to the rhythmic, comforting chugging of the pump jacks. On a late Tuesday night, around 11:46 p.m., he arrived at Pump 7, killed his engine, and stepped into the profound, star-drenched darkness. That is when the anomaly appeared. 50 feet from the pump, suspended silently above a low, rusty metal giard, was a perfect ring of light. This was not scattered light. It was composed of 12 individual orbs of pale blue-white energy, arranged in a precise 20-foot diameter circle. They glowed with such controlled intensity that there was zero light spill, pure, contained energy that felt scientifically impossible. The physical effects were immediate and disorienting. A profound, unnatural cold enveloped him, sinking deeper than any West Texas winter. The air was thick with the sharp, acidic scent of ozone, the smell of a massive electrical discharge or superheated metal. Simultaneously, his electronics failed. His digital watch began to beep erratically, flashing meaningless sequences, and his phone, which moments before held a 60% charge, went completely dead. Dalton watched, frozen, as the 12 lights began a slow, synchronized, rhythmic rotation. After what Dalton estimated was just 2 minutes of paralyzed observation, the light vanished with a silent, absolute finality. When his colleague, Hector Moran, arrived at 11:56 p.m., Dalton was visibly shaken. The simple fact was undeniable. Despite his own internal clock and malfunctioning watch, which read 11:49 p.m., he had lost exactly 9 minutes of time. Furthermore, the rusty guillard where the light had rested was now scorching hot to the touch, a sign of extreme, localized heat transfer. His supervisor dismissed it as St. Elmo's fire, but Dalton recognized the precision, the cold, and the blatant temporal distortion as evidence of a disciplined, purposeful presence. His exhaustion was instantly replaced by an unshakable obsession. He needed quantifiable proof. 3 weeks later, on another Tuesday night, Dalton was fully prepared. Alone at the remote Pump 12, his vehicle was outfitted with a charging pack for his phone, and his mind was tense with anticipation. At 1:09 a.m., the familiar, chilling cold descended, and the air crackled with a silent tension. This time, the formation was a perfect triangle of 3 larger, more intense blue-white lights, hovering 100 feet away. Shaking but steady, Dalton grabbed his phone and began to record, capturing 4 minutes and 17 seconds of the lights executing a complex, synchronized geometric pattern, a visual language. Suddenly, the triangle expanded, stretching its vertices outward to reveal the center, a massive, dark, physical craft. Its surface was non-reflective, appearing to absorb all ambient light, giving it a terrifying depth, like a perfect hole punched in the night sky. There were no visible rivets, seams, or conventional propulsion methods, a hallmark of true anomalous aerial vehicles, AAVs. As it descended slowly, a circular aperture opened in its underside, emitting a profound, visceral crimson light that pulsed, indicating a colossal, controlled energy source. Observing this light, Dalton experienced an acute cognitive jump, a jarring, instantaneous switch in consciousness. One moment, he was terrified and watching. The next, he was sitting back in his idling truck. The dash clock read 1:42 a.m. He had lost precisely 33 minutes of conscious awareness and memory. Scrambling out, he ran to the landing site. The metal giard was intensely hot. Below it, the ground was undeniable. The gravel had been swept away into a clean circle, and the soil beneath was vitrified, melted, fused, and cooled instantly into brittle, glassy earth, clear evidence of plasma weapon or extreme heat dissipation used by an advanced technology. Dalton resolved to keep the video a secret, acquiring the specialized EMF detector and high-end camera with Hector's help to prepare for the inevitable third act. 5 weeks after the second encounter, Dalton was back at Pump 7, his EMF detector placed strategically on his truck hood. It didn't beep, it began to scream, a loud, piercing, insistent alarm signaling the anomaly's return. Hundreds of individual blue-white lights appeared, arranging themselves in a breathtaking, ever-shifting fractal pattern, before finally coalescing into a single, complex object resembling a floating building of light and shadow. This ultimate structure was entirely non-Euclidean. Its angles and geometry appeared to shift based on Dalton's perspective, consistent with descriptions of high-level, possibly interdimensional, craft. At this moment, Dalton's sensory and cognitive perception shifted. The veil lifted. He saw beyond the light to the pure energy driving it, understanding the geometry of the universe. He felt like a colorblind man suddenly granted the full electromagnetic spectrum. A single, telepathic question imploded in his consciousness. Why do you observe? With his entire will, his soul's deepest impulse, Dalton responded, I want to understand. The vast floating structure dissolved, the hundreds of lights condensing rapidly into a single perfect sphere of light hovering barely 10 feet from his face. The sphere acted as a conduit, expanding his mind and filling it with compressed knowledge, a massive, silent download. He perceived the entities not as biological creatures, but as conscious energy patterns, geometric arrays of existence. They revealed themselves as the archivists, whose purpose was to meticulously record everything, every star, every atom, every thought, in a cosmic battle against entropy, the universe's eventual decay. They chose Dalton because his motivation was pure understanding, not fear or conquest. The lost time was not abduction. It was the duration required for the compressed data, an equivalent of years of research, to be fully written onto his consciousness. The sphere vanished, leaving Dalton kneeling in the dirt, overwhelmed not by terror, but by the shattering, overwhelming beauty of the cosmic truth. The encounter fundamentally altered Dalton Ridgway. He kept the video footage, using it as his anchor to the truth. For a man who spent his life navigating the plains, trusting only his own reality was the foundation he had left. This quality qualified him for a truth the world would reject. 2 years later, he quit the oil fields, enrolled in community college to study physics, and eventually earned his doctorate. He became Dr. Dalton Ridgway, an astrophysicist who dedicated his life to anomalous observations and unexplained phenomena. He never spoke publicly about his nights in West Texas, but his academic career was built upon the knowledge he acquired. He published dense, technical papers on electromagnetic anomalies and complex geometric patterns, works that hinted at the profound truths he held without ever stating them outright. He established himself at the edges of the map, where accepted science broke down. And every few years he would receive an email or a letter from someone else who had seen the lights, experienced lost time, or gained a strange, inexplicable certainty. Dr. Ridgway always responded, validating their experiences, knowing that the archivists were still out there, still recording. This is the heart of the story, the moment a simple oil worker stepped past the edge of normal reality and saw the mechanism behind it, the archivists quietly recording everything while the universe slowly decays. But here's what matters to us. If ordinary people like Dalton can be chosen, then what is it about your life, your attention, your curiosity, your need to understand that could make you a candidate too? And if any of this feels strangely familiar, don't scroll past. Drop a comment and keep it simple. Tell me where you are, what you experienced, whether your electronics failed like a battery drain or a signal drop, or your clock jumped, and what you felt in your body, cold, numbness, dizziness, ringing in your ears, anything. Every week I'm going to pick the most specific reports, compare the overlaps, and start building a real hotspot map from the patterns. If you want to be part of the group that tracks the real signs, hit subscribe. Don't just watch, document. Grant McCarthy thought he understood the Alaskan sky. Then the aurora stopped behaving like the aurora. A pale band froze rigid in midair, and inside it a perfect white line appeared, thin, steady, and too precise to be natural. In the same moment, the Twin Otter's radios fell into absolute silence. Digital systems began lying, and the shape in the sky started moving as if it could read the aircraft. This is not a story about chasing UFOs. It is about a repeating pattern that interacts with an aircraft like a controlled experiment. Communications cut out without static. Digital avionics drift into absurd errors while analog instruments remain steady. A geometric form appears inside the aurora, rotates with mechanical smoothness, and then begins to match the plane's movement with unnerving precision. Grant McCarthy, 41, was trained to trust procedure, instruments, and weather models. His co-pilot, Renee Voss, carried the same discipline. Their route from Fairbanks to Barrow was familiar, remote, and usually uneventful. What happened on 2 separate flights suggested something else lived in that corridor, something capable of touching a machine in midair and leaving physical proof behind. Early February, the Twin Otter lifted from Fairbanks and flew north without issue for hours. Then the aurora formed ahead and stopped behaving like the aurora. A long east-west band of light froze rigid in mid-motion. Inside that frozen curtain, a single white line appeared, razor straight, pencil thin, bright enough to force a squint. It held perfectly still, too precise to feel natural. The cockpit failed in a way that felt selective. Radios dropped into absolute silence, primary and backup, with no static. GPS flickered and began reporting impossible jumps, altitude numbers spiking and collapsing while analog dials stayed calm. Ahead, the white line rotated with mechanical smoothness, tilted slightly, corrected, then appeared closer in sudden steps, as if its distance updated between blinks. It split into 3 identical lines and arranged into a perfect triangle, point up, centered in the forward view. When Grant altered heading, the triangle rotated to stay aligned with the nose. When he adjusted altitude, it matched the change with exact timing. It was tracking. A harsh burst of static snapped through the headset, and a monotone male voice issued a directive to maintain heading and not deviate. The triangle flared once in intense white and vanished. The Aurora resumed normal motion. Radios returned, GPS stabilized. Yet the aircraft recorded a communications loss the ground logs did not acknowledge. After landing at Barrow, the proof was on the airframe. Thick frost coated both wings, far heavier than expected, and a faint scorched discoloration marked the nose, which stayed warm long after shutdown. The official inspection found no shorts, no clear damage, no mechanical explanation. On paper, it became an unexplained malfunction with possible Aurora interference. In the cockpit, it remained something else. Grant could not ignore how selective it had been. Radio silence without noise, digital lies without analog failure, geometry that behaved like a guided instrument rather than atmospheric light. In early March, Grant and Renee flew the same corridor again with no passengers. A single white point appeared ahead, then blinked out. The radio cracked once, and the same monotone voice returned, issuing a calm directive that tried to steer them by command rather than by control tower procedure. The temperature in the cockpit dropped rapidly. Frost crept along the windshield edges. GPS flickered. The white point returned as a line, then divided into three, forming the triangle again as the Aurora seemed to fade away behind it. The triangle held its position relative to the aircraft like a lock-on symbol, matching heading and altitude changes with exact timing. Then the aircraft's behavior shifted from abnormal to impossible. It dipped hard, then surged into a steep climb driven by full power without pilot input. The yoke locked. At 14,200 feet, the climb stopped instantly, and the aircraft held as if pinned in place, engines settling into idle without the expected fall. The triangle moved closer, and the pilots realized it was not the object. It was an outline, edges of something larger, dark, massive, silent, filling the forward view and erasing depth. Control returned violently during a sudden drop. At lower altitude, the aircraft stabilized and the dark mass disappeared. After landing, the physical marks were clearer. Frost again clung to wings. The nose discoloration remained. Beneath the fuselage, 3 parallel burn lines were scored into the paint, evenly spaced, precise as measurement marks. This time, the response did not stay inside rumor and logbooks. FAA investigator Patricia Keller confirmed the physical evidence aligned with the crew's timeline. The scorch patterns suggested thermal exposure rather than scraping, chemicals, or maintenance error. The burn lines under the belly were too uniform to be random damage, and the paint showed signs of heat applied in narrow bands. The frost samples showed unusual crystalline structure, closer to conditions the aircraft had not actually flown through. Even the heat on the nose after shutdown behaved wrong, lingering like the metal had absorbed energy and refused to give it back. What made it worse was the system-like behavior. The failures were selective, almost surgical. Radios went silent without the messy signature of interference. Digital systems became unreliable in clusters, while the analog instruments stayed stable enough to keep the crew alive. The geometry appeared inside the Aurora, then acted like a tracking tool, rotating to remain aligned with the aircraft's nose and copying altitude changes as if it was reading a live stream of the plane's state. That suggested intent, or at least a process that responded to control inputs. Grant began searching for precedent. He found a declassified military report from the 1980s describing a strikingly similar event over the North Slope. Communications loss without conventional noise, navigation anomalies, and heat-related discoloration on aircraft surfaces. Different decade, different crew, same region, same fingerprint. The corridor was not producing a new anomaly. It was repeating an old one. That changed how the story felt. It was no longer a strange night with a strange light. It became a long-running pattern embedded in that airspace. A phenomenon that could reach into a cockpit systems, reduce a modern aircraft to partial blindness, then present a geometric form that behaved with the calm precision of machinery. It did not need to chase the plane. It only needed to establish rules, force compliance, and then release control once the demonstration was complete. The official conclusion remained conservative. Unknown aerial phenomenon, possible environmental influence, unexplained equipment malfunction. The words were safe because they did not claim more than regulators could prove. Operationally, the response spoke louder. Grant McCarthy and Renee Voss were reassigned to southern routes. The Fairbanks to Barrow corridor became a place their company preferred not to test again, not because they could define the threat, but because the threat had already proven it could touch an aircraft and leave marks that survived the flight. For Grant, the last meaning was personal and cold. That route felt claimed. Not claimed by a nation or a weather system, but claimed by an intelligence or mechanism that could impose behavior on machines in midair. The frost was a signature. The heat scars were a signature. The 3 burn lines were a signature. A way of saying contact happened, and contact could happen again. Grant never saw the lines again, but the patterns stayed. He kept flying, but he watched the aurora differently, scanning for the moment it might freeze, for the moment a perfect straightness might appear, where nature should only ripple. When other pilots mentioned radios going dead with no static, GPS jumping while analog stayed calm, sudden frost that made no sense, or heat scars on metal, Grant listened because he recognized the structure behind it. Now it turns to you. What fits better? Classified testing, rare atmospheric physics, or an intelligence imposing rules on machines in midair? If the sky signaled tomorrow, would you recognize a pattern or explain it away until it fades? Drop your theories in the comments. Subscribe for new sightings, anomalous energy readings, and the repeating patterns hiding in plain sight. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. Some disappear without leaving footprints. Others disappear by being deleted. On a clear Nevada morning, Mara Lewis watched a column of white light stab straight through the sky like a spear pinned to the earth. 34 minutes later, her aircraft data said she had not moved at all. 4 days after that, her flight coordinator, Victor Hale, was gone. Not missing, not dead, erased. Mara Lewis was 32, former Air Force, now flying contract environmental surveys along restricted edges of Nevada's test corridors. She trusted instruments the way other people trusted instinct. She trusted airspeed, fuel flow, heading, and the calm repetition of routes that never changed. Victor Hale was the ground link. He watched her telemetry, marked her waypoints, kept her on schedule, and kept her safe by being the voice that always answered. On August 14th, the sky gave Mara something that did not belong to weather or training or any human chart. At 6:45 over waypoint Alpha, the desert looked ordinary from above. Pale ridges, dry washes, scattered scrub, the kind of landscape that hides secrets simply by being too empty to question. Then the column appeared, a vertical shaft of white light, impossibly clean, rising from the ground and continuing upward past cloud height, past blue, as if it did not stop at atmosphere at all. It did not bloom or flare like lightning. It did not diffuse like sun glare. It was precise, like geometry forced into the sky. Mara banked to confirm it was real, and the light did not shift the way a reflection would. It remained anchored to a point in the desert like a nail through a map. As she closed the distance, the ground beneath it resolved into a perfect circle, a burn scar too symmetrical to be a wildfire. About 300 feet across, scorched into a crisp boundary, as if the sand had been branded by a massive seal. The surface inside the ring looked fused, darker and glassy in places. Even from altitude, it read as heat that had been controlled, not heat that had spread. Her instruments still looked normal for a few more seconds, as if the aircraft itself was debating whether to believe what her eyes were seeing. Then the first failure hit. The radio did not degrade into static. It simply stopped, like sound had been switched off. The radar blanked. The navigation display blinked once, then steadied on a frozen value that refused to update. Mara tried to turn away, a simple retreat that should have been automatic. The controls resisted, not like a jam, not like a mechanical failure, like an invisible hand had decided her heading for her. At the boundary of the light, the world began to misbehave. The air outside the windshield seemed thicker, not with weather, but with geometry. Her altimeter held, her engine held, and yet the horizon no longer shifted the way it should. It felt like the sky had been pinned in place. Then she saw them. Not reflections, not clouds. Aircraft. Dozens of them, suspended at different angles around the column like objects embedded in clear resin. A B-52 hung nose up, frozen mid-climb. A military helicopter sat tilted as if caught in a sudden gust that never finished happening. Older silhouettes hovered beside newer ones, all locked in the same impossible stillness. No contrails, no rotor blur, no motion at all. Mara's stomach dropped as the realization landed. This was not a beam in the sky. It was a trap that could hold time. She pulled the yoke and felt the response vanish. The controls did not jam mechanically. They simply stopped belonging to her. The Cessna continued forward with gentle certainty, as if guided on rails, slipping toward the center of the column. In the brief seconds before the light swallowed the cockpit, her instruments began to lie. Numbers flickered into values that could not coexist. Heading and speed remained calm while the world outside looked closer and farther at the same time. Her phone screen flashed once, not with an app, but with a blank brightness that felt like an eye-opening. And in that tightening space, Mara understood one thing with brutal clarity. Whatever held those aircraft was aware of her arrival, and it was making room. Mara never felt the aircraft enter the column. There was no jolt, no turbulence, no sense of crossing a boundary. One moment she was watching the white shaft carve the sky. The next, the cockpit was inside a brightness that didn't behave like light. It didn't illuminate, it replaced. Shadows didn't fade, they stopped existing. Sound thinned into a muffled layer. The engine vibration became distant, like a memory of motion instead of motion itself. Outside the windows was a pale emptiness threaded with faint grid lines as if the air had been printed. The suspended aircraft were closer now, and worse. Not just frozen, but collected. A B-52 hung at an angle that should have ended in catastrophe, yet it stayed pinned. A military helicopter sat motionless with rotor blades locked mid-sweep. Older silhouettes hovered too. Airframes that belonged to decades Mara knew only from manuals. They weren't floating, they were archived. Her instruments tried to argue. The GPS string kept reordering itself. The clock flickered through impossible timestamps. A warning tone repeated too steadily to be random, too clean to be failure. Then something noticed her. Not a figure, not a voice. A tension, vast and ancient, pressing against the inside of her skull like deep water. Memories opened with surgical precision. Childhood, training, the first solo, stall recovery, the smell of fuel on hot tarmac, Victor Hale's face in the control room. Each moment surfaced, turned, inspected. The pain wasn't physical. It was cognitive. Her identity tightened into a shape that could be measured. The harder she resisted, the more she sensed resistance itself being logged. A final impression branded itself into her mind. The column wasn't a beam. It was a corridor of light with faint circuitry like striations, bending where geometry shouldn't bend. The frozen aircraft weren't accidents. They were samples, held at the edge of time for as long as the intelligence chose. Then the pressure released. Mara blinked and the cockpit snapped back into ordinary physics. Blue sky, normal glare, familiar engine hum. Her hands were already locked on the yoke, knuckles white. The panel read green across the board, calm and indifferent. The logs were worse than her nerves. Flight data showed no forward movement for 34 minutes. No drift, no turn. A perfect hold at altitude, as if the plane had been pinned to a point in space. Engine parameters stayed normal the whole time. It was recorded like routine, like time had paused her and restarted without leaving fingerprints. Back on the ground, she went straight to Victor Hale. Someone had to confirm her track. Someone had to say they'd seen the gap. Instead, she found a blank space where Victor should have been. Not an empty chair. Gone. His desk didn't exist. The schedule board had no name in his slot. The staff list skipped cleanly from one coordinator to the next with no gap, no correction marks, no hint a line had been removed. Mara searched emails, flight plans, sign-offs, duty logs. The system returned nothing, not even an error. It was as if the database didn't recognize the letters in his name, and the people around her didn't react like someone had vanished. They reacted like she'd asked about a person who never worked there. Confusion, mild impatience, polite correction. Mara watched their faces and felt something colder than fear settle in her chest. This wasn't denial. It was absence engineered so completely it had rewritten the room. Only Mara still remembered Victor. That was the real proof the column wasn't just an anomaly in the sky. It could freeze machines like insects in amber. It could stop a plane without leaving a trace. And it could erase a man so thoroughly that even bureaucracy forgot how to say his name. Mara left the station with her flight log in hand and a single certainty sharpening into place. The column had let her go, but hadn't let Victor hail. Mara didn't go public. She checked the data first. 34 minutes missing. Then Victor Hale was erased. No files, no emails, no one who truly remembered him. That was the real message. The column didn't just freeze aircraft. It could delete people. 6 months later, one text slipped through. VH. 2 letters saying he still existed somewhere, time couldn't reach. If reality can erase a person, the only defense is to make the story too widespread to erase. What would you do if someone vanished and everyone swore they never existed? Drop your theories in the comments. Subscribe for more. The call came in like any other. Loose cattle on Highway 16. A routine hazard in Texas hill country, the kind of thing that ends with reflective cones and irritated ranch hands. But Nina Caldwell arrived to a pasture that looked staged. 63 head of cattle stood in a ruler straight line, perfectly still, all facing the same patch of sky. No chewing, no swishing tails, no restless hooves, just a synchronized stillness that felt less like fear and more like instruction. And then her phone clock slid backward, minute by minute, as if time itself had been told to wait. Nina had been a Texas state trooper for 7 years. She trusted patterns, tire marks, heat shimmer, human lies. She knew what panic looked like and what fraud sounded like. That night, outside Medina and Bandera, she felt something worse than panic. She felt a system operating with calm confidence, using the land, the animals, and the air above them like components. Hill country was supposed to be open space and honest darkness. Instead, it became a sealed room. Bo Harrington met her near the fence line, older hands shaking with a kind of dread that didn't ask for comfort. The cattle were not scattered across the road like the dispatch said. They were gathered, arranged, aligned, as if the pasture had turned into a runway. Nina stepped into the grass, and the world grew quieter in a way she couldn't explain. Not the normal quiet of rural Texas, but an engineered quiet. Insects still existed, the breeze should have existed, yet everything that made the night feel alive was suddenly muted, as if someone had lowered the volume on nature. A faint light pulsed on the roof of the cattle barn. It was dim, almost shy, but it had a rhythm. A slow heartbeat of illumination that made the barn look temporarily unreal. The strangest part wasn't the glow, it was the shadows. Fence posts, railing, even the cattle themselves cast shadows that leaned toward the light, not away from it. The pasture's logic had flipped. Nina caught herself staring at the ground, trying to force physics to behave. When she checked her phone again, it insisted the evening was still in the 7 o'clock hour. Her patrol car's dashboard clock agreed. Her wristwatch did not. Her sense of time did not. The sky looked like after 9, the deep kind of dark that arrives when the day is fully gone. Yet the devices around her kept rewinding, as if something overhead wanted the night to last longer. The clouds began to move with purpose. They didn't drift. They rotated, tightening into a perfect circle, a clean geometry that didn't belong to weather. The ring widened and stabilized, and at the center of it hung a shape so dark it seemed to drink starlight. Not a silhouette, not a shadow, a mass. Nina felt her throat close as the air temperature dropped fast, too fast, the kind of sudden chill that doesn't come from wind. Heat fled the yard in a single breath. Her skin tightened, her fingertips went numb. On the barn roof, figures appeared, tall, thin, wrong in their proportions. They didn't move like people crossing a surface. They repositioned with minimal motion, like frames missing between moments. Their bodies were long and spare, with angles that hinted at joints but refused to confirm them. Nina couldn't settle her eyes on faces. She could only register the fact of attention. The cattle did not run. They remained lined up like witnesses. The pulsing roof light brightened and the shadows bent harder toward it, as if gravity had begun taking instructions from illumination. Nina reached for procedure, for radio calls and backup requests, for anything that would turn this into an incident with a normal ending. But the air had a different plan. The sound around her thinned. The usual world felt farther away, like she was standing inside a bubble that didn't share rules with the road behind her. Then her mind slipped, not into sleep, not into unconsciousness, into somewhere adjacent, a sideways fall into a different awareness. Nina's awareness didn't fade like sleep. It slid sideways, as if the ranch and the night were still there, only separated by a thin pane of glass. One moment she was in hill country air that smelled of dust and cattle. The next, she stood under a purple-gray sky that felt too low, lit by light that came from everywhere at once and made shadows feel unnecessary. The ground held her weight without texture. In the distance, structures rose that didn't look built so much as grown, ribbed arcs and layered shells that pulsed faintly like a system breathing. No doors, no windows, no obvious machines. Yet the place felt like a controlled environment, a sterile field designed to test one thing. Her. A pressure gathered behind her eyes. Not pain at first, but a firm hand on the back of her thoughts, turning her attention where it wanted. Memories surfaced in clean sequence, pulled forward as if selected from labeled drawers. Her first day in uniform, crash scenes, night radios, the habit of scanning for danger even when nothing was happening. It didn't feel like interrogation, it felt like measurement. The presence was immense, not in size, but in certainty. Meaning arrived without words, packed tight and unfolding inside her mind. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't kind. It simply observed with a calm so complete it made human fear feel loud. Then she understood what was happening at the ranch. They weren't interested in cattle as livestock. They were interested in what cattle did to people. The protective instinct, the way a rancher guarded his herd, the way a trooper stepped between harm and someone else. That was the signal they were studying, the human reflex to shield. And Bo Harrington was the target. A fixed period, 47 days. Not a threat in the human sense, more like a clinical decision. Nina sensed that the bargaining itself was part of the process, to see who would offer themselves, to see what humans did when the danger wasn't a gun or a storm, but an intelligence that could rewrite the rules of the room. So she pushed her intent forward like a badge in the dark and offered a trade. Not pleading, structure. She presented herself as a better variable, trained observation, stress discipline, a mind conditioned to record detail. If they wanted to study protection and empathy, she could give them a cleaner sample than Bo, and she could survive the process long enough to remember it. The presence evaluated her with frightening neutrality. The pressure behind her eyes intensified, and the world seemed to pause on the edge of an answer. Agreement arrived without warmth. It felt like a latch releasing. The purple-gray sky deepened. The grown structures seemed to lean toward her awareness. She felt herself being opened, not harmed, but unfolded. Layers of memory and identity briefly exposed, scanned, and stacked back into place. For an instant, she saw a wider grid beyond this space. Moving lights in the dark, corridors of brightness connecting points like routes on a map that wasn't meant for humans. Then it snapped shut. Nina sensed the ranch again like a distant sound through walls. She understood she had only a second to leave proof in the human world, a single thread that might survive what came next. Her last act of control was practical, not heroic, forcing a message out to her department before the connection collapsed. And then the barn, the cattle, the rotating clouds, all of it fell away. Not destroyed, simply removed, as if a square of the world had been folded inward. The study began. Nina came back on Christmas morning, alone in wet grass with no tracks, like the night had been removed and put back wrong. Her body was fine, but time didn't feel straight anymore. Some moments arrived like memories from the future. She kept the job because routine was the only thing that still felt real. Officially, nothing happened. When she tried to write it down, the details slipped, turning soft and ordinary, like the truth didn't want a record. Now, on empty stretches of Highway 16, she doesn't scan for headlights. She watches the sky for seams. The scariest part wasn't what they showed her. It was how calm she felt agreeing to it. What if the bargain never ended? It just moved inside her. If your shadow ever pointed the wrong way, would you keep driving or stop and look up? Drop your theory in the comments. Subscribe for more missing time and repeating patterns. This isn't fiction, it's a warning. In the Central Valley, night usually settles like dust. Jade Carrion knew that darkness well. Harvest season teaches you the logic of orchards, pump lights, distant traffic, honest shadows. That is why the line shook her so fast. It didn't flash into view, it was just there, suspended above the citrus canopy, a pale blue stroke, perfectly straight, perfectly still. No source, no spill, no shadow on the leaves below. It looked less like light and more like a mark someone had drawn across the world. The longer she watched, the more her body reacted. First, a low vibration she felt in her chest, then a sense the air had thickened around that strip of sky. The orchard stayed familiar, but the space beneath the line felt controlled, like an invisible rule was being enforced. She raised her phone to document it. The camera refused to focus, as if reality itself didn't want a record. Jade managed a 180-acre orange ranch outside Visalia. October meant long days and late nights, irrigation checks, and a routine so familiar it felt safe. She had thought the valley's darkness was empty. She was wrong. Jade stayed late to check irrigation in the North 40. The grove was empty, rows of orange trees turning into dark tunnels, only the occasional click of a valve breaking the quiet. She saw the blue line because it made the air feel split. It hovered above the canopy, perfectly straight and level, stretching across multiple rows like a ruler had been dragged through the night. It didn't spill light onto leaves, didn't cast shadows, didn't flicker. It just existed, clean-edged and unreal. A low vibration settled into her chest, more felt than heard, steady like a machine holding a constant note. Jade lifted her phone to record. The camera refused to lock onto it, snapping focus to branches and back to darkness, leaving the line as a smear on the screen. She tried again, same result. When she lowered the phone, the line was still razor-sharp to her eyes. No glow on the ground beneath it, no mark, just normal soil and fallen leaves under something that shouldn't be there. She backed away slowly, keeping it in sight. The vibration stayed calm and unchanged, as if she'd stepped into the edge of a monitored zone, and whatever drew that line had no urgency at all. She called Reagan, her husband, to come back to the grove. When he arrived, he didn't speak at first, just stared up, then stepped under the blue line like he was testing an invisible boundary. The change was immediate. The air didn't get colder so much as wrong. Sound thinned, like the orchard had been wrapped in glass. The hum sank deeper into Jade's ribs until it stopped feeling like noise and started feeling like pressure. They called CHP. The dispatcher didn't ask follow-up questions, didn't sound curious, just ran a script and ended the call too cleanly. Then the valley reacted anyway. Up on Highway 99, traffic bunched and stopped in uneven clusters. People stepped out and looked up in the same direction, quiet in the same way. And above the asphalt, more lines had appeared, not beams, not lasers, but perfect pale blue strokes suspended in the air, holding their place like a measurement drawn onto the sky. Jade stared long enough to notice the spacing. Parallel, precise, not random. A few cars tried to inch forward under them. Most didn't. Because the moment the first car rolled too close, brake lights rippled down the line like the whole road had flinched. And Jade knew, with a certainty she couldn't justify. The lines weren't just being seen, they were seeing back. Jade did not go home after Highway 99. She took back roads, like she could outrun the feeling that the lines had noticed her noticing them. At a stop sign, her phone buzzed from a number with no history. Don't stand under it. Don't look for the source. They log attention. She typed, "Who is this?" and hit send. The message vanished from the thread as if she never wrote it. Another ping followed. If you go back, go analog. No cloud, no live, no GPS. Back at the ranch office, she pulled up irrigation data and soil temps, trying to force the night into something measurable. Most of it looked normal, except one sensor map that showed a razor-straight discontinuity across 3 zones, like the orchard had been cut by an invisible ruler. One side was colder, not just at the trees, but in the air above them. She grabbed old-school gear from the office drawer in her truck. An AM radio, a compass, a cheap analog watch, a disposable film camera, and a notepad. She turned her phone off anyway and drove back to North 40. The orchard was too quiet, not peaceful, sterile. The AM radio caught a repeating tone under the static, slow and heavy, like it was vibrating inside her ribs. The compass needle twitched, then tugged toward the deeper rows. Halfway in, she crossed an invisible threshold. One step was normal night air. The next step felt thinner, pressured, electrically wrong. Then the blue line appeared again above the treetops, 6 inches wide, perfectly straight. It did not glow like a lamp. It looked like the air itself had been colored. Her flashlight did nothing to it. She raised the disposable camera and clicked. The moment did not feel captured. It felt refused. She clicked again, just to prove to herself she could. The line did the impossible. It relocated without moving. One blink, it spanned one gap. Next blink, it spanned a different gap yards away. No slide, no sweep. Just a new placement, like the scene had been edited between frames. Her truck was behind her, her phone was off. It vibrated anyway. She ran back, yanked it from the glove box, and the screen was already awake. No lock screen, no passcode. A single command sat there. Marker 23, County Road 168. Now, come alone. At marker 23, the air felt heavy, storm-like without wind. Her headlights washed over an empty field, and yet her brain kept insisting there was mass out there that light refused to define. Then her eyes adjusted. A compact object sat low in the field, warping the air around it. Not huge, not cinematic, deliberate. Parked like it did not fear discovery. Beside it stood a tall silhouette, narrow torso, long limbs, head shape wrong in a way her mind could not label. It did not sway, it did not fidget, it simply waited. Her phone brightened. Text appeared as if placed there. You are early in the change. Then meaning arrived inside her head, not words. Not threat, not warning. Assessment. A flash of an image hit her, the Central Valley from above, crisscrossed by pale blue lines, a grid laid over human space like measuring tape over skin. She understood the point with sick clarity. Attention was the signal. Her phone showed one more line. Don't try to keep proof. Keep yourself. The silhouette stepped forward once. No footfall, no crunch of dirt, just a shift, like a cursor moving on a screen. Her analog watch made a single loud click. The world dimmed for a breath. Headlights, stars, the edge of the field, like someone lowered the exposure on reality. Then the night returned. The object was gone. The silhouette was gone. Marker 23 was just marker 23. The wind came back in a soft gust that felt almost staged. Jade sat in her truck shaking, staring at her hands to convince herself they were still her own. On the passenger seat, the disposable camera lay exactly where she had dropped it. The film counter had advanced by 3 frames. Jade remembered taking one shot. Jade won't describe what happened between 3 and 3:17 a.m. Not because she's hiding it, because the memory won't stay sharp. But one thing is clear. Those blue lines didn't act like random lights. They acted like a grid. And a grid isn't there to scare you, it's there to measure. 3 weeks later, Reagan starts forgetting details. Jade doesn't. Her last note is simple. They didn't erase the story. They chose who could still remember it. And then, she goes quiet. If you saw the line tonight, would you record it, run, or go back? Comment. Record, run, return. Everyone assumes the desert is empty and predictable, but OSR 19 behaves like a doorway that ignores distance, ignores clocks, and rewrites what radar is allowed to see. The moment Beck notices a perfect 1.2-mile blind stretch that makes vehicles vanish and reappear, he realizes the real threat is not what is on the road, it is what the road is. Beck Molina is a Border Patrol radar technician with 8 years on the job at a remote northern monitoring station. During a late shift maintenance check, he spots a clean, consistent blind stretch mapped perfectly onto Old Service Road 19, known on station maps as OSR 19. On the scope, vehicles entering that segment vanish completely, then reappear at the far end with no bridging track, no drift, no scatter. Beck runs every standard test, swaps channels, checks power, recalibrates filters. The blind zone holds its shape. In archive storage, he finds an older handwritten note tucked into a previous technician log. The line is short and heavy on the page. OSR 19, do not ask questions. At 11:54 p.m., Patrol Unit 72 driven by Harper Velasquez rolls toward OSR 19 on routine coverage, and Beck watches the blip with the quiet discipline of 8 years on radar. But tonight the blind stretch looks less like a glitch and more like a boundary someone placed with intent, because its edge is too clean, too exact, and it sits on the road like a rule. At a steady 43 miles per hour, the 1.2-mile segment should take about 1 minute and 40 seconds. So Beck counts, then the track hits the boundary and drops out instantly, not fading and not scattering, simply erased, while a tight band of interference blooms in the same shape every time as if the system is signing its work. 5 minutes pass, then 10, and Beck calls Harper while rerunning diagnostics that now feel pointless. and Harper answers calmly and says she entered OSR 19 about 30 seconds ago, forcing Beck to confirm the log timestamps that show 11 minutes have already passed. Under her voice, Beck hears a thin harmonic wobble riding the carrier signal like a second presence breathing through the radio, and Harper adds that her wristwatch has stopped, that the dashboard clock is flickering toward 12:31, and that her headlights look trapped, the beam shortening as if darkness is drinking it. When Beck asks what she sees ahead, Harper says the roadside reflectors are repeating, the same marker appearing twice, and beyond the shoulder she can make out tall, gaunt shapes spaced evenly in the desert, not moving yet somehow closer each time she blinks. And then her words begin to arrive delayed and doubled, as if two versions of the same moment are overlapping. And in the overlap, Beck catches a low whisper that Harper insists she did not say, a steady phrase pressed close to the mic that sounds like an instruction being tested. Beck realizes the blind zone is not only hiding vehicles from radar, it is placing observers along the road and inside the signal itself, and whatever is there is listening to how a human voice reacts to fear. Beck drives to OSR 19 without triggering a full station alert, and the service road cuts into the desert night like a deliberate incision. Then he finds Harper's vehicle parked on the shoulder with all lights off and no engine sound, and Harper sits rigid behind the wheel with eyes wide open and a smile stretched too wide to be voluntary, as if her face has been set for display. The air around the cabin feels edited, colder than the surrounding desert, and when Beck steps onto the blind segment, his own vehicle begins to glide forward at a steady 5 miles per hour, even with the brake engaged and the gear in park, while the asphalt wakes with faint phosphorescent seams that trace angular patterns under the tires like circuitry. Digital displays flicker and lock at 12:31 a.m. The GPS loops, and the sky over the road flattens into a dull sheet. Then the low hum returns, and Beck sees the first alien figures clearly. Tall and gaunt silhouettes placed at perfect intervals along both sides of the road, absorbing the glow instead of reflecting it, their heads angled toward the vehicles as if they are reading occupants rather than watching traffic. The radio clicks on by itself, and Harper's voice comes through, warped and heavy, telling Beck to keep driving and not to stop. But beneath her words, another tone rides the signal, a thin, layered whisper that echoes his own breathing a beat late. And when Beck looks at Harper, he sees tears running while her smile holds, and her pupils shift toward the roadside figures as if she is tracking them even when she cannot move. As the car glides deeper, the figures do not step yet. Distance collapses, their outlines sliding closer as if the road is folding space to bring them near, and Beck feels a cold wash pass through his hands like water through glass. Then he notices a second silhouette reflected in the windshield for a fraction of a second, too tall to be human and positioned where no one is sitting, and he understands with sudden certainty that the alien presence is not outside the vehicle alone. It is in the lane, in the light under the asphalt, and inside the cabin, testing how far it can take control before anyone dares to stop. They burst out of OSR 19 the first time with Harper still crying behind that impossible smile, and Beck's hands still cold from the wash that passed through sealed glass. So when Desert Sound returns, it feels less like safety, and more like a curtain dropping after an audience has been studied, and the station clock turns their unease into proof, because 53 minutes are missing from a 1.2-mile crossing while the speedometer never left 0 miles per hour. Beck opens the radar logs expecting only absence, but he sees their tracks stacked in multiple positions at once before vanishing. And in the same slice of time, he finds thin vertical returns aligned along both shoulders at perfect spacing, stronger than before, as if the corridor briefly allowed the alien watchers to register on the scope, then hid them again. They go back the next afternoon, and the second they touch the threshold, all sound dies while vibration stays. The phosphorescent seams under the asphalt sharpen into bright angular cells that pulse in a slow rhythm, and the alien figures appear in close rows, tall and gaunt with smooth plain faces where lines of light sweep like scanning beams, while smaller glints hover above the road just ahead of the windshield as if guiding the car. Each time the vehicle passes through a figure, the cabin lights dip, The radio clicks, a cold surge crawls through Beck's palms, and Harper's mouth moves with no sound while her smile tries to climb again against her will. Then the radio carries a second layered whisper that is not Harper and not Beck, repeating Harper's name in a measured cadence as if the corridor is confirming identity. The vehicle field returns and it is arranged. Patrol units and civilian cars half buried or hovering, duplicates across different years, and around the densest clusters stand more figures in tight rings like keepers, while silhouettes flicker inside cabin reflections, appearing in the rear view for a blink, then between the seats, and Beck catches a clear windshield reflection of a tall shape exactly where no one is sitting, and the cabin temperature drops as if a door has opened in the air. Beck refuses to stop and refuses to turn back, drifting forward until OSR-19 releases them. And when sound returns, Harper cannot remember the final moments, and Beck finds a pale dust print on the inside of the passenger window shaped like a hand with too many finger lengths, with the glass beneath it faintly warm as if held from the other side. Outside the blind stretch, both Beck and Harper notice faint geometric symbols glowing under the skin of their palms with no pain and no burn, and they lock the radar logs, the recorder, and the photographs inside the station's safe, while Beck writes one private line he will never file. OSR-19 breaks rules. Months later, the marks flare brighter on a moonless night, and the radio wakes itself with that same low hum, leaving one question that refuses to die. If OSR-19 bends time and copies vehicles across positions, is it a natural anomaly, a classified experiment, or a deliberate system built by something watching from the other side? Comment your theory, then hit like and subscribe. The truck vanished in an instant. The lane went empty like it had never been there. And when Grant checked his watch, he realized 15 minutes of his night had been cut out cleanly. The only thing left behind was Sierra Mays' final video frame, her face drowned in blue light inside a cab that looked completely empty to the naked eye. At 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, Officer Grant Reich is running patrol on Highway 207, roughly 30 miles from the Oklahoma line, a flat stretch of Texas Panhandle where the darkness feels wide and the road noise is usually honest. Then his headlights catch a full-size 18-wheeler stopped dead in the northbound lane, with no hazard lights, no flares, no reflective triangles, just a heavy shape planted in the middle of the road like it has been placed there to be found. Grant pulls behind it, angles his cruiser lights for visibility, and expects the usual: a groggy driver, a mechanical failure, maybe a medical event. But the first detail that unsettles him is the total absence of human reaction, because no cab light turns on and no door opens and no silhouette moves behind the glass. Grant approaches with his flashlight and sees the truck is locked tight, the mirrors still, the windshield dark, and when he checks the cab and the sleeper area through the windows, he sees only empty seats and empty bunks and a dashboard that looks powered down. Then he radios dispatch for the owner information and hears a reply that bends the moment into something stranger, because the registered operator, Sierra Mays, is on the phone right now, and she is reporting that she is inside the cab. She can see the police lights, but she cannot see any officer walking toward her truck. And she is asking why no one is opening the door. Grant asks dispatch to patch Sierra through directly, and when he hears her voice, it is not distant or unclear. It is immediate and frightened, and she says she has been sitting there for 20 to 30 minutes after deciding to pull over because the air inside the cab suddenly felt heavy and the road ahead seemed to ripple. Then she says she watched the cruiser arrive and stop behind her, yet the side mirror shows no one exiting. He asks Sierra to describe the cab, and she says there is a blue electronic light flooding the space without casting shadow, a glow that feels like it is coming from every surface at once and from nowhere at all. And as she speaks, Grant looks at the truck with his own eyes and sees no blue glow on the glass and no spill on the asphalt. But when she agrees to switch to a video call, the screen in Grant's hand shows Sierra sitting upright in the driver's seat with her face washed in that blue light, her hands shaking on the steering wheel, her eyes tracking the flashing police lights outside, and the impossible contradiction locks into place, because the video shows a living person trapped in the cab while his direct view through the window shows an empty seat. Then the time slip appears because Sierra tells him her clock reads 1:37 a.m., while Grant's cruiser clock has already rolled to 2:31 a.m., and she insists she has not been stopped long. Yet Grant checks her location history through dispatch and sees the GPS ping has been stationary far longer than she believes, more than an hour and a half, and as the call continues, the video stutters in tiny jumps, not like poor reception, but like frames being removed, and each stutter briefly sharpens the blue glow into geometric bands that crawl across the ceiling and down the window frames, as if the light is scanning the cabin. Grant decides the contradiction ends only when he gets the door open, so he moves back to the driver's side lock with his entry tool. And as he sets the metal against the seam, the wind around the highway drops out as if someone has turned off the atmosphere, leaving a silence so complete that even dust in his cruiser lights seems to stop drifting, and the quiet feels pressurized, as if the world is holding its breath. His radio clicks once, then a voice comes through that is not Sierra and not dispatch, a voice with a strange cadence and a tone that never fully settles into any familiar accent, and it speaks as if reading from a rule book that does not care about his authority, telling him to step away, telling him that the civilian is not in his vehicle, telling him that the civilian is here. Grant freezes, because his body understands before his mind can organize it, and on the phone, Sierra begins to cry harder and says the blue light is thickening. She can feel it on her skin like static, and behind her in the video, the sleeper curtain lifts slightly, even though nothing moves it, revealing a deeper darkness that looks too deep for the small space. And then Grant forces his hands to move again and applies pressure to the lock. The moment the tool bites, the entire truck disappears without sound or displacement. No tire marks, no oil smell, no fading engine heat, just an empty strip of highway that makes his flashlight beam feel suddenly useless. And Grant staggers backward into the void of space where 40,000 pounds of metal had been, and his radio hisses into silence. When the wind returns, Grant checks his watch and sees 15 minutes have vanished, and his cruiser dashcam shows a gap in footage that begins at the instant the air went still, as if the road itself refused to be recorded. And in the empty lane, his headlights reveal nothing but clean asphalt. Yet on the phone, the call has dropped, and dispatch is calling his unit name with rising urgency, as if he has been gone longer than he can account for. In the days that follow, Grant tries to file a report that fits inside policy language, but every sentence collapses under its own contradiction, because the truck was present and absent at the same time, because the occupant was visible only through a screen, because time peeled away 15 minutes in a single breath, and the more he repeats the facts, the more he feels that voice on the radio was not warning him, it was classifying him. A few nights later, he receives a quiet invitation to a support group in Amarillo, and in a small room filled with folding chairs and paper cups, Grant hears his story reflected back through other mouths. Ranchers, mechanics, a volunteer firefighter, a dispatcher, all describing blue light with no shadow, absolute stillness in the air, and the feeling of being observed from angles that should not exist. The frequency is increasing across the panhandle, that vehicles return days or weeks later with electrical systems dead as if something drained them through the wiring. That paint and plastic show signs of intense ultraviolet exposure, and that lab tests on scraped residue have revealed metal isotopes that do not match known terrestrial ratios. Those who tried to shoot the light or force their way through it suffered brain injury, lost speech, or woke with language stripped out of their mouths as if the mechanism that took them could also remove the tool they used to describe it. Grant leaves that meeting with an unspoken certainty that Sierra is not an isolated case. She is an example, and the alien presence is using the highway as a controlled environment, placing paradox in the road to see who will approach and who will remember. 16 days later, Grant returns to Highway 207 before dawn, and the blue light blooms over the asphalt with no shadow, flattening distance until the road looks mapped by faint geometric grids. Then his radio turns on by itself, and the same non-human cadence states, "Sierra Mays is alive, preserved, and understudy, and she will be returned when the study is complete. And his dash screen flashes a single frozen frame of Sierra's face lit in blue before collapsing into static. The voice tells Grant he has been marked because he saw and retained the memory, and that his role is to carry the account. And he drives away understanding the highway is not a place anymore. It is a channel that can store people like data. If Sierra can exist on video while the cab stays empty, what is the corridor actually moving? Share your theory, then hit like and subscribe. What kind of light can hang inside heavy fog without diffusing, bend a spotlight beam like glass, and erase 12 minutes from a boat's GPS as if the water itself can edit time? And if a perfect white sphere is not illuminated but rendered, who is it meant to see when it appears over Puget Sound before sunrise? Logan Pierce had worked the Everett Harbor docks for 12 years, running a small fishing boat and trusting what could be checked, logged, and fixed. Engines, tide charts, weather windows, and hard numbers that did not care about belief. On November 8th last year, a canceled salmon charter left his boat fueled and ready, and Dylan Mercer, a calm marina maintenance worker with long sea experience, talked him into a quick run to check crab pots near Jetty Island. They cast off at 5:47 a.m. into thick fog and cold air, and Logan logged the time as always. But within minutes the sound felt staged, because the harbor sounds vanished, birds were absent, and even the fog seemed too uniform, like a curtain pulled across the water for privacy. And before either man saw any light at all, Logan had the unwanted certainty that something out there had already noticed them and was waiting for them to enter the right piece of water. For the first 10 minutes, Logan navigated by memory and lights, listening to the steady pulse of his engine. Then the fog thinned in uneven sheets and the silence tightened, and Dylan touched Logan's shoulder and pointed ahead. At first, Logan assumed it was a headlight from another boat, but the light did not sway and did not jitter with water. It held position like a marker pinned into the air. A bright white point hovered in the fog about 200 yards ahead and roughly 20 feet above the surface. And when Logan raised binoculars, the shape resolved into a perfect white sphere with edges too sharp to belong in mist. The fog did not scatter its glow. There was no halo, no fall-off, just a clean circle that looked rendered rather than illuminated. And as Logan stared, he noticed the sphere was not merely bright, it was exact, as if it had been drawn by a system that preferred precision over nature. Then Logan saw the first alien cue that was not light at all. A faint geometric shimmer in the fog around the sphere, barely visible, like a grid line catching on moisture, and it moved in slow pulses that did not match wind or waves. Dylan said the air felt thick, and Logan realized the sphere was not an object floating in fog. It was an interface, and the fog was being used as a screen. When they closed to about 100 yards, Logan cut the engine and let the boat drift, and the depth finder read 80 feet with nothing between hull and bottom. No structure, no shadow, just open water under a thing that should not have been able to hold still in moving air. Logan raised a high-power handheld spotlight and fired the beam straight at the sphere, expecting glare, but the beam curved cleanly and wrapped around it as if space had turned to glass. And in the same instant, the fog around the sphere showed faint angular seams that pulsed once like a heartbeat, and Dylan whispered that his ears hurt even though there was still no sound. The sphere slid north with no wake and then snapped into a perfect 90-degree turn toward deeper water, and pressure slammed into Logan's chest like a silent bass hit while his teeth began to ache, and the console erupted into chaos, compass spinning, depth numbers jumping, GPS flipping between Everett and Canada as if the boat had been briefly relocated and returned. As the fog thinned, the sphere brightened like a signal marker and revealed what it had been hiding. A dark gray craft the size of a bus, but flatter, disc-like, seamless, with no windows and no joints, rotating toward them while faint scanning lines rippled across its underside, and the boat's lights dipped as if something was drawing power through the air. A wave of heat rolled through the cabin and into their bones. The air tasted metallic, and then the craft tilted to about 45 degrees and launched straight up into the cloud layer, faster than Logan's eyes could hold, and the pressure vanished instantly. The electronics snapped back to normal, and the sound resumed its ordinary noises as if nothing had happened. They turned back toward the marina in silence because neither of them had language that fit what they had watched. And when Logan checked the clock, it read 6:14 a.m., only 27 minutes since departure, yet his body felt stretched as if hours had passed, and both men had red skin on their faces and forearms, like a severe sunburn, despite fog before sunrise. Logan searched for similar reports and found dozens from fishermen, pilots, and hikers reaching back years, all repeating the same elements with an accuracy that felt engineered. A flawless sphere that does not diffuse in mist, electronics failing in synchronized bursts, the air going unnaturally quiet, and time missing in clean blocks, and the repetition tightened into a single idea. This was a corridor with rules, not a random sighting. That afternoon, Logan noticed a perfect circle on his left wrist the size of a coin, pale and sharply defined as if drawn with a compass. And Dylan reported a matching circle on his neck under the jawline. And by morning, Dylan had 3 new circles on his forearm forming a perfect equilateral triangle, while Logan found new circles on his shoulder and collarbone with the same spacing. And when Logan tried to photograph them, the phone overexposed the marks into a bright white ring for a single frame, then returned to normal as if the pattern flared only for the sensor. They began documenting everything: clinic photos, time-stamped notes, instrument readings from the boat. But the more they recorded, the more the environment responded, because that night Logan felt the same pressure in his chest again with no sound attached. His boat compass swung several degrees on its own while the engine was off, and a faint white point appeared deep in the fog beyond the breakwater, steady and motionless, then split into 2 identical points for the length of one breath before merging and winking out. Dylan called a few minutes later, shaken, and said he had just heard Logan's voice on his phone telling him to meet at Jetty Island at first light, but Logan had not called. And when Dylan tried to replay the voicemail, the file existed yet contained only silence. And on Logan's navigation app, a new recent track appeared, a thin straight line from the marina to the jetty corridor, at a time his boat had never left the slip, followed by a clean blank span, matching the missing 12 minutes exactly, as if the corridor had learned how to write invitations in his own data. By the 3rd night, the circles looked slightly brighter under dock lights, and at 5:47 a.m., Logan's logbook was open to a fresh page on the galley table, with the departure time written in his own handwriting, even though he had not picked up a pen. And when he went to find Dylan, the berth was empty and Dylan's truck was gone, but the gate camera showed nothing except a brief wash of white across the pavement and a single frame where the air looked gridded. And after that, Dylan stopped answering entirely, leaving Logan with a fate already partially unfolding, because the corridor was no longer waiting offshore. It was reaching into schedules, records, and people. In early December, Logan returned to the Jetty Island waterline alone, and the sound went quiet the moment he crossed the invisible boundary, and the depth finder showed a large object hovering at 60 feet where the bottom should have been 90. So he lowered a GoPro and saw curved brushed metal with no seams before the cable locked hard as if held. Then the feed collapsed into perfect black for the final 30 seconds, and his GPS flickered into another clean blank span. On the way back, a flawless white point hovered just above the water off his bow, and his spotlight beam curved around it exactly as before. And when Logan reached for the radio to call Dylan, the display showed Dylan already connected, yet only a thin layered cadence came through, steady and close, like counting. If the corridor can edit logs, voices, and departures, what exactly is left of choice? Comment your theory, then hit like and subscribe for the next case. The Mojave went silent, and the CB line held its breath. A white sphere rose beside Lucas, watching without eyes. Then time snapped forward, as if someone skipped frames. Lucas had driven freight routes for 11 years. He hauled electronics across the Mojave at night. Interstate 40 felt endless, flat, and exposed. The cab smelled like diesel and hot wiring. The CB crackled with bored voices and dead air. That Thursday in October 2019, he left Victorville late. Needles waited far ahead in darkness. Near Daggett, the desert changed without warning. Wind died and the road sounded muted, Even the engine felt distant, like it was underwater. Lucas checked mirrors and saw nothing behind him. Around 11:15, wind dropped to nothing. The desert felt muted, like sound got absorbed. Lucas saw dust hang in beams, then fall straight down. The CB went quiet, then returned with thin hiss. A westbound rig passed, headlights flaring in fogless air. An unknown driver broke in on CB, voice tight. He said something sat on the road ahead. Lucas slowed his truck and kept both hands locked. The lane stripe glowed faintly under his beams. A pure white sphere rested on the stripe, perfectly round. It looked 4 feet wide, clean-edged and solid. It cast no shadow on pavement or lane paint. It gave off no heat shimmer at all. Lucas rolled closer, heart pounding behind ribs. The sphere lifted 2 feet, as if noticing him. It hovered without wobble, with a faint blue rim. The rim crackled like welding sparks, yet silent. Lucas raised his phone and filmed through the windshield. The screen showed glare, then sudden black. He kept filming, blinking through tears. The sphere remained bright outside, yet invisible to File. The hum began under tires, then inside his teeth. His chest tightened with each pulse, then released. The sphere jumped sideways without traveling. It snapped to a new spot, then back again. For 1 second, Lucas saw an outline beside it. It looked tall and slender, shaped from darkness. Long fingers hung too low, almost touching the stripe. The outline turned toward Lucas and held. Lucas threw the truck into gear and pulled away fast. Mirrors showed nothing chasing him, yet the hum followed inside the cab. At a truck stop, Lucas checked the receipt timestamp. His log time disagreed by more than an hour. The gap felt clean, like someone edited tape. 3 days later, the sphere returned near Lello at midnight. No wind moved, and the highway sounded padded and distant. Another driver called it in, voice shaking on CB. Lucas was nearby and turned back to confirm. The white sphere hovered above the center stripe again. Its blue rim flickered, then steadied like a held spark. Lucas filmed through glass, keeping his hands visible. The playback showed empty asphalt and dark horizon. The sphere split into 2 matching spheres, clean and silent. They separated without traveling through the space between. Chest pressure hit Lucas in 2 alternating pulses. The hum vibrated the seat frame and steering column. A tall, slender outline appeared between the 2 lights. It looked too narrow to be human. Long fingers unfolded, then folded again, slowly. The outline faced Lucas, then dissolved into the glow. Lucas checked his dash clock and felt sick. 90 minutes were missing, cleanly removed. By late October, drivers reported spheres across the Mojave segment. They described shadowless light resting on lane stripes. Some described silent arcs above ridgelines, swapping positions instantly. One driver recorded from his cab near Amboy. The video showed an empty road, despite blinding light outside. On November 17th, the northern horizon flared white in waves. The waves rolled without sound across distant ridges. Lucas stopped with other trucks and watched, frozen. Dozens of spheres formed a curved lattice in the sky. A few tall figures stood on the shoulder line, motionless. Their black eyes reflected no headlights at all. When Lucas moved again, 4 hours were missing. A month later, Dustin drove the shortcut again after midnight. The air went still near the same mile stretch. Temperature dropped fast inside the cab. The engine died cleanly, without any struggle. 2 spheres appeared first, then 4 more. They formed a wide arc around the truck. Tall figures stepped from the dim glow quietly. More figures followed, lining the shoulder and median. They were thin, too tall, and perfectly balanced. Their heads were elongated and smooth. Their eyes were black and almond-shaped. Their skin looked pale gray with a matte, wet sheen. Long fingers flexed with narrow-jointed segments. They moved with smooth, efficient precision. One figure stood in the lane, centered in headlights. It raised a hand, and Dustin stopped breathing. The hum pressed into his ribs in steady pulses. Frost flowered again across the windshield in fractal geometry. Symbols formed within the frost, drawn by hovering fingertips. A voice entered his mind, cold and exact. "You are marked, you will remember." The figures stepped closer without footfalls. They surrounded the cab like a quiet ring. Dustin watched a finger point at his chest. Another finger pointed at his throat. Another finger pointed at his forehead. The spheres brightened once, then dimmed to a low glow. The dashboard clock froze, then jumped ahead in blocks. Dustin woke at a rest stop, shaking hard. 6 hours were missing from receipts and device logs. His cab smelled like ozone and cold metal. His tongue tasted like pennies for hours. The hum lingered behind his eyes all day. A quiet research circle found him through trucker channels. They asked for his receipts and dash logs. They shared reports and symptom lists in plain envelopes. They warned him to avoid mirrors after encounters. Many witnesses had headaches, tinnitus, and memory gaps afterward. Some had triangular scars in mirrored placement. Some heard tones in teeth for weeks. Some saw doubles in reflective glass. One man forgot his own address for days. During a fourth encounter, 6 spheres formed a ring over desert ground. The ring opened like an iris without any sound. 5 or 6 entities appeared inside the opening. They stood taller than before, with longer arms. Their fingers fanned wider, counting invisible measures. A sequence of images hit Dustin without warning. He saw grids of roads and moving vehicles. He saw human faces fading into blank calm. He saw a boundary folding between places. The entities sent one clear concept into his mind. Time is ending. Choice is required. The hum became a heavy pressure, then weightlessness. 2 days later, Dustin woke in a Las Vegas hospital. He remembered a beam and a falling sensation. Doctors found fine white dust in his clothes. His phone held black frames and broken time codes. After that, encounters stopped for 6 months. Then Nevada lost power statewide for 47 minutes. Darkness hit like a curtain across every ridge. The hum returned inside Dustin's teeth immediately. 2 white spheres appeared above his street, shadowless. Tall figures stood between parked cars, perfectly still. A cold voice entered his mind, calm and final. The choice is now. Neighbors later reported his porch light blinking without power. A door camera saved only black frames that night. When power returned, Dustin was gone. His truck sat idling in the driveway, warm. The driver door hung open, swinging slowly. No footprints marked the dust outside. His receipts folder lay on the seat, neatly stacked. The last note inside read 47, then stopped. No one confirmed where Lucas went after Nevada that week. Dispatch showed normal pings, then sudden blank gaps. His phone never rang again afterward. His last log ended mid-sentence, then stopped. If spheres follow you home, what comes next? Do they erase, replace, or relocate witnesses? Share your theory, then like and subscribe for the next case. A dead zone lasted 47 minutes on radar. Dustin lived 3 missing hours instead. Something tall and faceless waited beside the spheres. Dustin ran long-haul routes between Las Vegas and Reno. He carried construction loads and kept night schedules. On June 17, 2020, dispatch sent him a shortcut. The route skirted the Tonopah test range in open desert. He reached Goldfield around 10 that night. The air felt wrong before he saw anything. The radio crackle thinned, then dropped into dead silence. 2 white lights hovered ahead, low above the roadway. They were not headlights, and they cast no shadows. As he approached, his phone lost signal instantly. His radio died, and even static disappeared. The lights resolved into 2 spheres, floating 3 meters high. Each sphere held a faint blue rim, steady and sharp. Cabin temperature dropped fast, biting through his jacket. Frost filmed the inside glass in thin sheets. The diesel engine cut off by itself, without a sputter. Absolute silence filled the cab, heavy and pressurized. A low hum rose through the seat and into his teeth. Dustin felt his chest tighten in slow pulses. In the dim glow, a tall, slender figure stepped forward. Its limbs looked too long and too narrow. Its face seemed smooth, with no clear features. It moved with steady efficiency, never rushing. Another figure appeared behind it, then another. They held position beside the spheres, like a line. Dustin could not move, not even his hands. His eyes stayed open, yet his body refused. The spheres brightened once, then dimmed again. The nearest figure reached the driver door and stopped. Long fingers hovered near the handle without touching. Then the light snapped off as if switched. The engine restarted by itself, idling smoothly. Wind returned in a sudden rush outside. The frost on glass melted too quickly, leaving streaks. Dustin drove hard toward Tonopah without looking back. At a station, he checked the clock and receipts. Almost 3 hours were missing from his memory. 2 weeks later, Dustin returned with cameras and spare batteries. He reached the same shoulder at 10:52 p.m. The air went still before any light appeared. 2 spheres formed above the asphalt, perfectly aligned. They looked larger now, and oddly faceted. Their skin swallowed headlight glare, leaving no reflection. A blue rim held steady, sharp, and silent. The hum returned and pressed behind his eyes. Frost crawled along vents and across the steering wheel. Tall figures stood beside the spheres, arranged like sentries. They were thin, too tall, and motionless at first. One stepped forward with long, jointed fingers. Its face looked smooth, without features, yet somehow watching. A voice entered his mind, cold and measured. "Do not move, you are being observed." His hands clenched, yet his arms felt far away. The figure raised a hand toward the windshield. Ice flowered instantly into geometric fractals across the glass. A fingertip traced symbols through the frost, without pressure. Dustin filmed, keeping his face visible in frame. Every file saved black, with clean gaps in the audio. Even the clip timestamps jumped forward in uneven steps. When the spheres blinked out, the frost vanished too quickly. Dustin drove hard until Tonopah lights appeared. At dawn, an envelope waited under his wiper blade. Inside were radar scope prints from June 17. His truck track entered a hollow, then vanished completely. The hollow lasted exactly 47 minutes on the chart. Receipts still showed nearly 3 missing hours that night. A note warned, "Do not ask for names here." Another line read, "Reports now arrive 3 times weekly." One print showed faint returns circling the hollow edge. They folded into a triangle, then into a tight ring. A month later, Dustin drove the shortcut again after midnight. The air went still near the same mile stretch. Temperature dropped fast inside the cab. The engine died cleanly, without any struggle. 2 spheres appeared first, then 4 more. They formed a wide arc around the truck. Tall figures stepped from the dim glow quietly. More figures followed, lining the shoulder and median. They were thin, too tall, and perfectly balanced. Their heads were elongated and smooth. Their eyes were black and almond-shaped. Their skin looked pale gray with a matte, wet sheen. Long fingers flexed with narrow-jointed segments. They moved with smooth, efficient precision. One figure stood in the lane, centered in headlights. It raised a hand, and Dustin stopped breathing. The hum pressed into his ribs in steady pulses. Frost flowered again across the windshield in fractal geometry. Symbols formed within the frost, drawn by hovering fingertips. A voice entered his mind, cold and exact. "You are marked, you will remember." The figure stepped closer without footfalls. They surrounded the cab like a quiet ring. Dustin watched a finger point at his chest. Another finger pointed at his throat. Another finger pointed at his forehead. The spheres brightened once, then dimmed to a low glow. The dashboard clock froze, then jumped ahead in blocks. Dustin woke at a rest stop, shaking hard. 6 hours were missing from receipts and device logs. His cab smelled like ozone and cold metal. His tongue tasted like pennies for hours. The hum lingered behind his eyes all day. A quiet research circle found him through trucker channels. They asked for his receipts and dash logs. They shared reports and symptom lists in plain envelopes. They warned him to avoid mirrors after encounters. Many witnesses had headaches, tinnitus, and memory gaps afterward. Some had triangular scars in mirrored placement. Some heard tones in teeth for weeks. Some saw doubles in reflective glass. One man forgot his own address for days. During a 4th encounter, 6 spheres formed a ring over desert ground. The ring opened like an iris, without any sound. 5 or 6 entities appeared inside the opening. They stood taller than before, with longer arms. Their fingers fanned wider, counting invisible measures. A sequence of images hit Dustin without warning. He saw grids of roads and moving vehicles. He saw human faces fading into blank calm. He saw a boundary folding between places. The entities sent one clear concept into his mind. Time is ending, choice is required. The hum became a heavy pressure, then weightlessness. 2 days later, Dustin woke in a Las Vegas hospital. He remembered a beam and a falling sensation. Doctors found fine white dust in his clothes. His phone held black frames and broken time codes. After that, encounters stopped for 6 months. Then Nevada lost power statewide for 47 minutes. Darkness hit like a curtain across every ridge. The hum returned inside Dustin's teeth immediately. 2 white spheres appeared above his street, shadowless. Streetlights stayed dark, yet shadows moved across his driveway. A sphere hovered above the roofline, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Frost formed geometric petals on his windows, then vanished. The air smelled of ozone and wet stone. Tall figures stood between parked cars, perfectly still. A cold voice entered his mind, calm and final. The choice is now. His phone lit up, showing 10:52 p.m. again. The time display blinked, then froze on the same minute. A tall figure stood at the porch steps facing inward. Its long fingers traced symbols in air above the railing. Those symbols glowed briefly, then sank into the wood grain. A second figure appeared behind it, matching his height exactly. Its face looked blank, yet familiar in the porch glass. Dustin tried to shout, but his voice stayed trapped. Neighbors later reported his porch light blinking without power. A door camera saved only black frames that night. Inside the cab, the hum rose until his vision shimmered. He later remembered weightlessness and a metallic taste. When power returned, Dustin was gone. His truck sat idling in the driveway, warm. The driver door hung open, swinging slowly. No footprints marked the dust outside. Only a thin line of white dust crossed porch boards. It ended at the door, then continued inside the cab. His steering wheel felt cold, despite the warm engine. The radio hissed a tone, then spoke his name once. His receipts folder lay on the seat, neatly stacked. The tone matched the hum from desert nights. His mailbox held a new envelope, sealed without glue. Inside was a single black frame printed on paper. It showed his porch, empty, with a sphere above. The last note inside read 47, then stopped. Dustin kept every receipt, gap, and black file in one box. After the blackout, that box was all that remained. No one proved he lived or died afterward. The number 47 stayed behind like a signature. If they can take a driver from his own porch, what does the choice actually mean for us? Comment your theory, then like and subscribe for the next case. An indigo UFO hovered above Eielson runway, pulsing every 3 seconds. A small blue alien stood on snow, staring at Mason. 1 minute froze every device, while it watched him breathe. Mason hauled R-11 fuel at Eielson, night after night. Pilots joked about ghosts, but the runway had stranger rules. Blue lights sometimes floated beyond hangars, then vanished. Security logs showed gaps, and cameras saved black frames. Older crews whispered about an indigo UFO near the eastern tree line. They said a small blue alien walked the snow like it owned. Mason ignored the talk until his radio carried breathing. Cold nights made engines complain, but this silence felt engineered. On February 9, 2019, the rumors became a shift order. Night shift started with fuel smell and frozen breath. Mason drove the R-11 truck behind hangars alone. 4 F-16s waited with frost-crusted skins. He topped tanks with JP-8 under harsh floodlights. Jet exhaust left faint heat ghosts in snow fog. He cleared the main line and took the ring road. The road lay empty, lit by runway spill. The radio hiss thickened, like sand pouring through speakers. The hiss had rhythm, like slow inhaling. A clean indigo glow appeared above eastern snow. It pulsed every 3 seconds, perfectly timed. The UFO hung low, heavy light with no shadow. Mason watched the pulse reflect on icy taxi lines. His phone screen flickered, then looped 1942 and 1943. The digits swapped places by themselves each pulse. The truck clock froze, then jumped forward in blocks. Mason tapped the dash, and nothing responded. The UFO moved closer without sound or exhaust. Distance shrank too fast for any aircraft. Blue light spilled across the runway centerline. Snow turned glassy, bright, and painfully sharp. Security trucks stopped at the perimeter, engines idling low. Orders came clipped over a separate channel hold position. Nobody stepped closer, even with rifles ready. The sphere dropped to 50 feet above the runway. The radio hiss deepened and carried breathing again. Mason heard it between bursts of static. Each breath matched the 3-second pulse. Then something small stood under the light. A blue alien faced Mason from the snow. Its head formed a sharp triangle silhouette. Its eyes looked black and deep, without pupils. Its arms looked too long for its height. 3 fingers lifted slowly, mirroring the pulse. Mason blinked, and the alien was nearer suddenly. No footprints marked the snow between positions. Frost crawled across the windshield in geometric petals. The fuel ticket printer paused midline and clicked. The nozzle gauge needle trembled, then held steady. Mason felt chest pressure with each pulse. His ears rang without any sound. The alien tilted its head, studying his face. Runway lights flickered once, then stabilized. The alien vanished, then reappeared beside a runway marker. It stood closer than headlights should allow. The UFO brightened and dimmed like a heartbeat. Then it launched upward and erased itself in seconds. Wind returned with a rushing slap of cold air. After the runway cleared, Mason checked his paperwork in the cab. The fuel log showed a 13-minute blank gap. The truck GPS track looked straight, then stopped abruptly. The time column repeated the same minute twice. His phone history showed calls that never happened. The radio channel list reset to factory defaults. Mason replayed dash audio and heard only hiss. Under the hiss, the breathing returned for one beat. Maintenance pulled the truck for inspection at first light. Mechanics found nothing wrong with wiring or battery. The engine computer showed no fault codes at all. Yet every digital clock near the flight line matched one freeze. They all stopped for 1 minute, then resumed together. A lab analyst reviewed the anomaly quietly. NOAA satellite data showed the R-11 moved 200 yards. The vehicle GPS stayed frozen from 1936 to 1937. The same freeze hit radar and security monitors nearby. A camera frame showed snow mid-fall suspended. The next frame showed the same snow lower, still falling. Nobody could find the missing images between. The analyst compared mechanical and biological traces next. Tire marks continued through the frozen minute. Footprints advanced in the snow without interruption. Mason's heart monitor showed steady rhythm, no pause. He remembered blinking during that minute, twice. He remembered the alien closer than before, watching. He remembered 3 fingers lifted, then lowered. He remembered a symbol shaped like a ring. It hovered in his mind like an afterimage. The analyst said the minute was not lost for humans. They said it was denied to electronics only. They called it selective suppression of recording systems. Mason heard the phrase and felt cold again. If a device cannot record, it cannot prove anything. The base wrote interference in the official line. Mason signed the form and watched ink dry slowly. That night, he noticed a new scar on his palm. It was a pale circle with sharp edges. It did not hurt and did not fade. When he pressed it against cold glass, warmth returned. For a moment, the radio hiss inside his head came back. Mason volunteered for an observation post after that first freeze. He wanted distance from hangars and gossip. The post sat near a berm beyond runway lights. It was a small box of glass and steel. Snow drifted against its base like piled ash. The radio hiss returned there every night, patient. Before sunrise, the indigo UFO appeared again, pulsing steadily. It hovered low, then sank toward the snow. The light looked dense and heavy, yet silent. A second smaller glow formed beneath it, like a doorway. The air inside the post turned dry and cold. Mason saw his digital watch stop mid-second. A small blue alien stepped out onto the snow. It was about 4 feet tall. Its head formed a sharp triangle silhouette. Its eyes were black, deep, and without pupils. Its arms hung too long for its frame. It moved with smooth, careful efficiency. 2 taller figures appeared behind it, half inside glow. They stayed still, like guards. Their limbs looked longer and their faces looked blank. Mason could not hear footsteps on snow. He could only hear his own breath. The small alien approached the observation glass slowly. It raised a 3-fingered hand and pressed the pane. Frost bloomed outward in perfect fractal geometry. Symbols appeared inside the frost, forming a ring and line. Mason lifted his own palm to match it. Warmth rushed through his hand and up his arm. His chest pressure eased, then returned in pulses. A voice entered his mind without sound. It spoke in images, not words. He saw a frozen planet under dim stars. He saw underground bases glowing beneath ice. He saw tunnels branching like veins through stone. He saw the indigo sphere moving between points without travel. He saw runways drawn as lines on a grid. He saw Eielson as a dot within a map. He saw other dots lighting up, then dimming. The small alien shifted its head toward his face. Mason felt examined, counted, measured. The taller figures behind it leaned forward slightly. Their black eyes reflected nothing, not even his flashlight. For 3 breaths, time felt stacked in layers. One layer showed snow falling outside the glass. Another layer showed the same snow suspended midair. Another layer showed the runway empty, yet lit blue. Mason blinked and felt missing frames. The alien lifted its fingers and traced one last symbol. The symbol looked like a circle within a circle. Mason felt the hum align with his heartbeat. The post lights dimmed, then stabilized again. The alien withdrew its hand and stepped back. The doorway glow folded inward without sound. The indigo UFO rose without stirring snow. It blinked once, then launched upward and vanished. Mason looked down at his palm and saw a pale circle. The edge was sharp, like a stamp. Mason separated early in July 2019 with full benefits. He moved to Montana and tried normal routines but couldn't. Nights stayed the hardest and sleep came in fragments. He avoided mirrors and windows after dark. Indigo pulses returned in dreams, timed every 3 seconds. Sometimes he woke with radio hiss in his ears. Sometimes he woke standing, palm pressed to cold glass. He kept the pale circle scar as proof of the missing minute. He also kept the fear, sharper than winter air. He knew the record could be erased at will. If time can be edited, who decides what humans remember? Was the minute taken or planted inside him? Leave your theory below, then like and subscribe for the next file. At 3:17, Carlos's radio inhaled and exhaled with no signal. A UFO hovered above Bunker 12, pulsing blue through the darkness. Something tall waited inside, and his headlights forgot how to shine. Carlos Rodriguez followed one rule on night patrols. He never worked midnight on a new moon. On March 8th, he broke it for extra money. He wanted a gaming computer for his daughter. The northern sectors felt newer, quieter, and farther from help. No phone signal reached Sector E. The darkness that night felt thick enough to hold. Carlos started the midnight loop with a tight jaw. The new moon hid every ridge and marker. Sector lights sat far apart and felt useless. His tires whispered over gravel and dry salt dust. The radio hissed, then breathed like a hidden animal. Inhale arrived steady, then exhale dragged longer. He checked the channel knob twice, then froze. No signal should breathe with that rhythm. He drove past the A gate and counted fence posts. He logged each pump pad and each storage row. The air inside the cab thickened, then thinned again. His ears popped once, then rang with faint pressure. His headlights looked weaker with every mile. The gauges stayed calm and refused to explain it. The dash clock ticked, then skipped a second. Then it returned, pretending nothing happened. A pale blue pulse appeared in his left mirror. It hovered above the road behind him. It held the same distance like a measured tether. Carlos sped up and watched it match perfectly. Carlos slowed and watched it slow without delay. He turned at an access fork and it turned with him. It never swung wide like a truck would. It never corrected like a helicopter would. It moved like it already knew his route. He killed the cabin light and watched the pulse again. It stayed blue, clean, and edged. It did not blink like a tower beacon. It did not smear like a flare in wind. The pulse slid closer to his window. The radio breathing grew louder beside his seat. Carlos felt watched from above his roofline too. A wide shadow crossed the stars, then held steady. He tried to shake it with procedure. He stopped and cut his engine. The pulse stopped and waited behind him. He reversed slowly and the pulse slid backward too. He turned his headlights off completely. The pulse stayed visible and unchanged. The breathing continued in the radio, still timed. Carlos tasted metal and felt ozone in dry air. He started the engine and rolled forward again. The pulse followed, patient, as if guiding him north. Bunker 12 rose ahead like a black tooth. The blue pulse moved first. It waited above the bunker. The shadow around it widened. It flattened across the stars. It hovered low, perfectly steady. No wind stirred beneath it. No dust lifted from gravel. The radio breathing filled the cab. It sounded closer than his own lungs. Carlos felt pressure behind his eyes. His tongue tasted metal. The windshield glass tingled with static. His headlights dimmed until the road vanished. The engine died mid-roll. The cab went dead instantly. Every LED went dark at once. The breathing continued anyway. It now lived inside his skull. A blue glow pulsed near the bunker wall. It rose and fell like deep water. Frost crept along his window edges. The cab temperature dropped hard. His breath fogged, then vanished. Something stepped down from the hovering glow. It was tall, narrow, and wrong. Its limbs were too long. Its joints were thin and hinged. Its head looked smooth and stretched. Its eyes were black and unblinking. It moved without footfalls. Gravel never cracked beneath it. It faced the bunker door and raised one hand. The latch clicked without any touch. The door opened 6 inches. It stopped and held. Blue light breathed through the gap. A thin hiss rode the rhythm. It sounded like speech without syllables. Carlos felt a clean pull in thoughts. His body obeyed before refusal. He opened the truck door. Cold air bit through his jacket. The ground felt tilted. The alien stood at the crack. It waited like a handler. It turned slightly, inviting him closer. Carlos walked forward, sleepwalking. The blue glow painted his hands. His watch face flashed once, then it froze at 3:17. He reached for the door edge. His fingers shook but still moved. The alien leaned back, making room. The bunker air breathed out at him. Carlos stepped toward the bunker without choosing the step. The air felt pressurized, then hollow, then pressurized again. Cold seeped through his jacket and into his bones. The radio breathing followed him out of the cab. It did not fade with distance. The alien waited at the cracked doorway, perfectly still. Carlos saw blue light crawl along the concrete seam. He smelled ozone, metal, and something sterile. The watch on his wrist stopped at 3:17. The threshold felt like walking through deep water. His skin prickled, then went numb. A low hum rose from the floor into his teeth. A thin hiss threaded through the breathing, tight and sharp. He heard faint clicks inside the walls, like tiny relays. The corridor looked longer than the bunker should allow. The blue light did not reflect like normal light. His shadow disappeared, then reappeared, then disappeared again. A perfect frost circle waited on the concrete floor. The edge looked cut with a tool. Crystal branches formed sharp geometric patterns. His boot stepped onto the ring, and pain spiked upward. It ran from shin to knee in one flash. His vision shimmered as if heat rose from ice. He tried to lift his foot and could not. The hum pulsed, then paused, then pulsed again. Each pulse tightened his chest like a clamp. The alien moved deeper, and Carlos followed like a leash. Blue lines ran along wall seams like veins. Symbols lit briefly, then rearranged themselves. He could not hold their shapes in memory. The breathing rhythm slowed until it matched his heartbeat. Then it led his heartbeat again. The corridor widened into a room with no clear corners. The ceiling felt higher than any bunker ceiling. Images slammed into his mind in hard bursts. He saw the desert mapped by grids from above. He saw an ocean lit blue under black sky. He saw smooth rooms with angles that refused perspective. He saw humans frozen mid-step, eyes open, mouths silent. He saw a clock hand split into two hands. He heard a chorus of distant machinery, steady and ancient. His stomach turned as if gravity shifted sideways. A human voice cut through the radio like a rope. Unit 4, respond now. Repeat, respond now. The command snapped his mind back into place. The blue glow faltered for one beat. Carlos saw the alien closer than before, inches away. Its eyes reflected nothing, not even blue light. Then it faded backward into the glow. Carlos stumbled, turned, and ran for the truck. Behind him, the bunker door breathed once more. Back at the station, they showed him the recordings. For 66 minutes, Carlos never left the seat. He sat rigid, hands on the wheel, eyes unblinking. Yet the bunker camera showed the door open in blue light. Carlos understood he lost an hour while staying awake. What do you think the bunker did to him? Comment your theory, then like and subscribe for more Midnight Facility files. At 2:31, two low UFO lights split above the desert. Marcus Holland's voice turned metallic, then stopped sounding human. Unit 9 found his truck running, and something watched from darkness. Marcus Holland patrolled alone along the reserve's broken service trails. He knew the desert by radio calls, gates, and mile markers. Dispatch heard him nightly, a steady voice in dead air. Some nights, the air answered back with tones nobody owned. Older agents joked about missing minutes near that horizon line. Holland never joked, and he never chased lights without proof. Then at 2:17, he checked in like nothing waited ahead. Holland rolled the service trail at a steady crawl. The moonless desert looked carved from charcoal. Headlights cut two narrow tunnels through scrub. The fence line vanished outside their reach. His radio carried routine checks and calm replies. Then the background hiss began pulsing. It rose and fell like controlled breathing. He tapped the speaker and checked the mic. The pulse stayed perfectly timed. He switched channels and returned to base. The pulse followed him across every band. He muted the radio and it continued faintly. The cab air felt heavy and dry. His ears popped with sudden pressure. His eyes watered for no reason. The windshield tingled with static. Sand beside the trail stopped drifting. Distant brush stopped moving, despite steady wind earlier. Even his engine sounded slightly muted. The dash clock ticked, then stalled briefly. It resumed without explanation. The minute hand jumped forward, then corrected itself. He checked the glove box watch, and it disagreed. He swallowed and tasted metal in his mouth. At 2:31, he called dispatch with urgency. He reported an orange-white object ahead. It hovered low at the horizon line. It sat about 50 feet above sand. It did not drift with wind at all. The brightness looked clean and sharp. No glow touched the ground below. The stars behind it looked dimmer, like swallowed light. Holland said it was not a plane. Holland said it was not a flare. He said it felt too close for distance. His next sentence sounded wrong. A metallic ring wrapped each word. A hollow echo followed half a beat later. Some consonants doubled with exact timing. Static climbed behind his voice, then dropped. Holland said the object brightened again. He said the air tasted like pennies. He said his chest felt squeezed. He said the trail markers looked warped. He said his mirrors showed a darker sky. He asked if dispatch heard breathing. Dispatch heard it and stayed silent. Holland said the sound matched his own exhale. Holland followed the object by truck only. He never opened the door. The glow slid along the trail ahead. It stayed just beyond his headlights. It moved like it knew the path. He slowed and it slowed too. He sped up and it pulled away. It kept the same distance, measured and calm. The radio pulse grew louder each minute. His phone screen dimmed, then died. His dash clock flashed 2:31 repeatedly. The engine sounded normal, yet the truck felt heavy. The steering wheel tugged toward the glow. His mirrors showed empty darkness behind. Yet he felt close company. The light split into two identical orbs overhead. They held 30 feet apart, perfectly level. Holland said the truck slowed by itself. His foot stayed off the brake. The orbs brightened until sand looked colorless. The air inside the cab turned icy. His breath fogged and hung too long. His window glass grew a thin frost edge. A darker mass formed inside the glow. A tall figure stepped down onto the trail. It stood beside his hood, silent and still. Long arms hung too low, joints too narrow. A smooth head tilted toward him. Large black eyes held the cab like a lock. The figure raised one hand toward the glass. The gesture looked like invitation forward. Holland said it wanted him closer. He gripped the wheel until knuckles hurt. The hum pressed into his teeth. The orbs rotated in place, perfectly synchronized. The figure moved without footfall sound. It slid one step, then another, unreal smooth. It stopped at the passenger window line. The black eyes stayed on his face. Holland felt his tongue go numb. His radio hiss became a tight grid of clicks. The clicks matched a counting rhythm. His dash lights dimmed, then flared. His cabin temperature dropped again. He tried to speak and choked. He stayed seated and stared forward. The figure angled its head as if listening. The orbs pulsed, then pulsed again. His heartbeat matched their timing. The windshield briefly showed faint geometric seams. They looked etched into the air itself. Holland whispered a warning, but static swallowed it. Then his signal collapsed into patterned static. Unit 9 arrived at 3:04 to a running truck. Headlights stayed on and steady. The engine idled without changing tone. Doors stayed locked from the outside. The trail looked undisturbed around the tires. No footprints crossed the sand nearby. No brush was bent near the doors. The cab looked empty from every window angle. Their radios carried the same pulsing hiss. They circled the truck with flashlights and radios. Their beams found nothing under the chassis. The hood was cold to touch. The mirrors were frosted in thin lines. The windshield showed faint condensation shapes. The shapes looked like angular symbols. They shifted when lights moved across glass. They forced the lock and opened the door. The seat was empty and belts lay untouched. The cab air felt colder than outside. A faint smell of ozone clung inside. The radio speaker hissed in slow pulses. The pulse matched the earlier cadence. Unit 9 called Holland's name into the empty cab. The speaker answered with a metallic chirp. The chirp repeated on perfect intervals. It sounded like a reply without language. Their dash camera recorded, then froze. The frozen frame showed a faint orange smear. Then the camera resumed with nothing visible. Unit 9 searched outward along the trail edge. Their light swept brush and stones. The desert went too quiet again. Even the idling engine sounded distant. A faint orange shimmer hovered farther down trail. It blinked out without movement. Their radios crackled with clipped bursts. The bursts repeated on exact intervals. It felt like someone counting. The air pressed on their ears again. They found Holland behind a low berm. He lay face down and unmoving. His arms were tucked under his chest. His skin felt cold, yet he breathed steadily. No drag marks cut the sand behind him. No footprints led away from the truck. It looked like he fell straight down. His patrol cap sat beside his hand. It was perfectly clean of sand. His boots had no grit on them. They lifted him, and he jolted awake suddenly. His eyes stayed wide and glassy. His jaw moved with stiff precision. He spoke in a metallic voice for long seconds. The same phrase repeated with perfect timing. Each repetition carried less human rhythm. His breath did not match his words. It sounded like an instrument reading him. His head turned toward the horizon. He stared at nothing and trembled. Then his face softened, and he blinked hard. His normal voice returned like a switch flipped. He asked why they moved his truck. He denied leaving the driver's seat at all. He insisted the last marker was 62. He remembered a low glow ahead. He remembered turning toward the passenger window. He remembered nothing after that. He started shivering and could not stop. Holland lost 35 minutes and refused every question. Unit 9 was ordered to stay quiet. The audio was stored off network. What spoke through Holland when the orbs hovered overhead? Comment your theory, then like and subscribe. At 22:17, SkyWest 4782 began final descent toward runway 09L. A blue-white sphere ignited at the threshold, blinding both pilots. The tower saw nothing, yet every headset caught a 2-second hum. Mira worked the night position in the Bozeman Tower. She trusted radar, cameras, and repetition. That night, all three betrayed her at once. The pilot sounded shaken, then too controlled. Their words arrived clipped, almost rehearsed. They aborted landing and climbed back into cloud. Mira replayed the audio and found the hum again. It sat under speech like a second signal. The runway cameras showed only empty pavement, but one frame held a shimmer, like heat waves in winter air. Mira monitored the final approach with routine calm and tight timing. Wind remained steady and visibility stayed clean above ground haze. SkyWest 4782 reported the object without any hesitation. They described a sphere straddling the center line at the threshold. They could not see runway edges through its brightness. Yet the brightness spilled no light onto concrete. It looked sealed, like a contained pocket of radiance. Mira asked for distance and movement. Their reply arrived fast, then echoed half a beat later. The next sentence sounded slightly higher than normal speech. A metallic ring sat beneath each syllable. The hum returned under their words and matched their pauses. The crew announced a go-around with perfect cadence. Mira watched their altitude climb on radar without any drift. Then the radar track stuttered for one sweep. It corrected itself immediately, as if ashamed. The runway camera still showed nothing solid or moving, but the centerline area shimmered like hot air in winter. The shimmer widened for a heartbeat, then snapped flat again. The hum lasted exactly 2 seconds and ended hard. Mira checked other recordings from backup systems. Every system captured the same 2 seconds, perfectly identical. The waveform edges looked too clean for atmospheric noise. She listened again and heard a second layer beneath it. That layer sounded like counting without language. She wrote the time, then wrote it again, shaking slightly. Mira zoomed the threshold camera and compared consecutive frames. One frame held warped pixels along painted markings. The paint appeared to bend without any camera movement. She marked the frame and printed it for evidence. Ground crews inspected the threshold within minutes. They found no heat signature and no residue. They found no smell and no burn marks. Yet Mira felt the tower air pressure shift briefly. Her ears popped again, then settled. She stared at the empty runway and felt watched, not by people, but by something above procedure. 2 weeks later, another crew refused 09L on final. They reported the same blue-white mass. Their tone changed mid-sentence. It shifted from fear to flat control. Mira heard the hum again, exactly 2 seconds. The tower speakers vibrated during those 2 seconds. Mira felt it in her teeth. The runway cameras still showed empty pavement, yet one lens caught glass like distortion. It flexed, then relaxed above the centerline paint. Weather logs showed nothing unusual. Maintenance logs showed no faults. Ground crews found nothing again. Then unmarked vehicles arrived before sunrise. They parked near the fence and stayed dark. Men carried sealed cases across the grass. They placed them in perfect arcs. They installed sensors beside runway edges. The spacing looked measured and deliberate. They never asked what Mira believed. They asked for raw files only. They asked for headset models and timestamps. They asked which channel carried the hum strongest. Their calm felt rehearsed. It felt like they expected this. After that, the phenomenon started reacting. It appeared earlier when aircraft lined up. It brightened when landing lights faced the threshold. It dimmed when the runway went dark. It felt like attention changed its behavior. On April 14th, it returned in clear air. The centerline shimmer formed first. Then the sphere surfaced from nothing. Sensors spiked across multiple devices. The air seemed to bend near the threshold. The sphere split into two identical nodes. They moved symmetrically down the runway. They stayed perfectly centered and level. They moved like a demonstration, not a chase. They merged again at midfield. They vanished without any acceleration. The sensors showed a sudden magnetic twist. Several screens flickered with faint geometry. Mira saw a darker shape inside the glow. It looked tall and slender. It stayed motionless as the nodes moved. For 1 second, it felt closer than distance. Then the screens cleared and returned to normal. After April, the spheres began anticipating every inbound aircraft. They appeared before final clearance, then vanished before questions. Pilots reported frozen clocks during only the last mile. Others reported radios going silent, then snapping back. Mira logged each event and saw repeating intervals. The hum always lasted 2 seconds, never more. It carried a layered rhythm, like structured counting. Some nights it arrived without any visual sphere. The runway paint shimmered anyway, then relaxed. Ground crews saw nothing with flashlights or vehicles, yet their hair rose during each 2-second pulse. Mira began hearing the hum in her teeth. It returned when she blinked too long. A new antenna array appeared beside runway 09L overnight. It was installed with quiet speed and no explanation. The operators transmitted prime numbers into the dark sky. They followed with binary blocks and long measured pauses. The centerline shimmer formed immediately after each transmission. The sphere appeared brighter after every sequence. It answered with tones that climbed in strict steps. The steps matched Fibonacci spacing, then shifted into ratios. Engineers watched the graphs and stopped speaking entirely. The tower lights dimmed for one breath, then recovered. Mira felt pressure behind her eyes again. She looked outside and saw silhouettes inside the glow. They were tall, thin, and unnaturally still. They stood like figures behind frosted glass. Their limbs seemed too long for any human shape. Pilots described the same silhouettes from different angles. Their descriptions matched without coordination or contact. Mira realized the sphere was not the craft. The sphere was the doorway. The translations began outputting the same 4 tags nightly. Observation appeared first, then understanding, then preparation. Threshold repeated like a stamped label on every response. The sphere started moving along the runway centerline. It stopped exactly at painted distance markers. It pulsed as if scanning each marking and seam. A second sphere appeared beside the first, perfectly aligned. A third sphere rose above them, forming a triangle. The hum changed into a chord, still 2 seconds. The air above the runway looked folded, not blurred. Mira watched the heat shimmer become geometric ripples. They looked like layered grids, stacked in depth. The silhouettes inside the spheres turned toward the tower. Mira felt that turn inside her chest. Her hands went numb on the console for seconds. Every headset in the tower went quiet together. Then the emergency frequency filled with soft tones. Those tones carried a calm, deliberate intent. Mira understood the intent without words. On June 4th, Bozeman's sky filled with hundreds of spheres. They formed a lattice above the valley and airfield. The lattice pulsed like a single breathing machine. Runway lights flickered in synchronized patterns across the airport. Tower windows rattled without any wind or thunder. Every screen switched to a star map instantly. Coordinates scrolled with impossible precision and no system lag. The silhouettes appeared inside many spheres at once. They stood in rows, as if observing a classroom. Mira felt images enter her mind without sound. She saw Earth from far above, cold and fragile. She saw a route line arriving from black distance. She saw a threshold concept, not a physical door. A single question pressed into her thoughts. Will you step forward or stay inside fear? The lattice tightened, then folded inward in one beat. The sky snapped back to normal darkness instantly. Silence returned, heavy and unnatural. Mira heard only ringing ears and shallow breathing. The hum never played again through any recorder. The FAA blamed ice crystals and rare optics in cold air. Mira resigned months later, still hearing that hum. What do you think they actually measured that night? Share your theory, then like and subscribe. Elena stepped outside her tent and saw a silent UFO hovering over Three Sisters. 3 white orbs circled it in a perfect triangle, like escort lights with no beam. Then an alien voice entered her mind and said, "Elena, slow and calm." Elena is a landscape photographer from Denver. She came for night skies and empty desert. The orbs looked bright, yet the ground stayed dark. No lights spilled onto sand or stone. A deep vibration rolled through her bones, and a voice inside her mind said her name. Elena fled to a ranger station. The ranger listened without surprise and showed her a thick folder called the Echo Files. It held decades of reports about lights, voices calling names, and missing time. Old university research from the 1990s was shut down without explanation. One visitor vanished after trying to communicate. A former ranger later died from sudden heart failure, leaving photos of tall figures with faces lost in darkness. Morning arrived with pale sun and a dry, restless wind. Elena returned to the campsite with the ranger and several helpers, moving slowly as if the ground itself could mislead them. The tent was down, not torn by weather but pressed and folded in a way that felt intentional, with stakes pulled cleanly from the soil and laid beside the fabric. Her gear had been shifted by inches, small enough to doubt her own memory, yet too consistent to ignore. The flashlight she kept in her pack was gone, and they found it standing upright on a boulder as if displayed, perfectly centered inside a ring of 12 stones set with measured spacing. No footprints surrounded the boulder, no scuffs, no drag marks, only smooth sand that looked untouched since yesterday. Elena tried to rationalize it as a prank, but nobody in that group laughed, and nobody offered a simple explanation. Elena checked her camera files with trembling hands. Every image she remembered taking of the orbs was missing, replaced by frames of empty sky that matched the same angles and settings, like the scene had been edited after the shutter clicked. One final photo remained, and she knew she did not take it. It showed a tall figure near the Three Sisters rocks, too straight and too still, with proportions subtly wrong. Shoulders narrow yet towering, limbs too long in the dim. Where a face should be, there was only a clean patch of darkness, not shadow, more like an absence that refused detail. The ranger studied it in silence, then said it matched an older case photo kept in the Echo Files, taken years ago by a former ranger who later died after similar encounters. As they packed up, Elena heard her name again, faint and distant, carried on no wind she could feel. She did not tell anyone. The others kept their eyes low on the trail, and the desert around them felt charged, as if waiting for a single upward glance. The escalation came in daylight, which made it harder to dismiss and easier to fear. Reports poured in from observation point, and Elena returned with the ranger to meet a loose cluster of locals who claimed they had seen the lights under a clear blue sky. From the overlook, the desert spread wide and bright, yet the air above the rock formations looked subtly distorted, like heat shimmer without heat. Then 3 white orbs appeared, clean and featureless, hanging motionless for a heartbeat before sliding into a pattern that felt deliberate. They moved in arcs that resembled star charts, turning at sharp angles with perfect timing, as if tracing constellations no human had named. People pointed and argued in whispers, yet none of them stepped forward. When the orbs shifted closer, the ground beneath them stayed unlit, as if the brightness existed only for eyes, not for the world. Elena felt the change before anyone else noticed. Sound dulled, her breath seemed far away, and the edges of the landscape widened as if she was seeing through a lens with the wrong focal length. In her mind, a tall presence took shape, more than 2 meters, calm and unmoving, its skin threaded with organic circuit-like patterns that pulsed faintly in a rhythm she could not count. It did not speak aloud. It pressed meaning directly into her thoughts, telling her that photography captured only a small truth, and that the larger truth required transformation. For a moment, Elena saw layers of reality peel back, time folding and sliding sideways, distance behaving like a suggestion instead of a rule. She tried to hold on to names, to her own history, to the feeling of her hands, and then the world snapped back with people staring at her as if she had been gone. Her phone clock and wristwatch no longer matched, separated by several hours, and when she checked her messages, she found a new text from an unknown number. It told her to return alone tonight to Three Sisters, promising to show her what she was ready to see. The ranger warned her about missing time and mimic voices, but Alina listened and still made her choice. Night returned with a clean, starless darkness. Alina drove back alone to Three Sisters. Headlights kept low, eyes fixed on the road line. She parked far from the rocks and walked the last stretch on foot. The desert felt staged, too still, as if wind had been told to stop. She carried her camera, spare cards, a small recorder, and a few markers to anchor her mind. She did not bring a flashlight. She rebuilt the circle with the 12 stones, placing each one where she remembered it. The flashlight stood upright again on the boulder, though she could not explain how it returned. Elena set her camera on a tripod aimed at the open sky above the rock spires, then placed a second device on the ground facing the circle. She whispered her own name once to test the air. The sound fell flat, absorbed as if the desert refused echoes. The orbs arrived without travel. One moment the sky was empty. The next moment 3 white spheres hung above the rocks. They held their triangle with strict precision, rotating slowly as a single unit. The light looked bright enough to burn, yet it did not touch sand or stone. Elena felt the familiar vibration build in her bones, deeper than fear, deeper than sound. She kept her chin level, refusing the instinct to tilt upward too far. A fourth presence made itself known, not as a shape at first, but as pressure. Elena sensed a tall figure just beyond her direct sight, positioned where her camera aimed, meaning pushed into her thoughts, calm and weighty, asking her to step into the circle. Elena understood then that the warning was not about the sky itself. It was about attention, about the direction of the mind. She realized the orbs were not the visitors. They were the escorts, the markers, the instruments that guided focus. Elena stepped forward. The moment her boots crossed the stone ring, the world thickened. Time lost its clean order. The desert around her became layered, like multiple versions occupying the same space. The tall figure resolved in her inner vision, over 2 meters, skin threaded with organic circuit patterns that pulsed softly. It did not speak with words. It showed her a concept of watching that felt endless. Beings outside time, observing a world that changes too fast to hold. Loneliness flowed from it, not human, but unmistakable. Elena felt herself becoming a surface they could touch without breaking. 3 hours passed on her devices. Inside her mind, it felt like weeks. She saw static as a language, noise as a carrier, light as a grammar. She learned to look without feeding the wrong kind of observation, to measure reality without collapsing it. When the pressure released, Elena found herself standing outside the circle with her camera still recording. The orbs were gone. The air was normal again, yet she could now see faint currents in the darkness, lines of energy threading through the desert. After that week, Elena was seen less and less. Some say she moved closer to the desert. Some say she never left Three Sisters again. The echo files kept growing, with new pages added quietly. If you think you know what took Elena, write your theory in the comments. Like and subscribe for the next report.
Dean opened Unit 23 and found the odometer reading 0 miles. The dashcam file showed 47 seconds of white screen and a deep well echo. Dispatch swore he vanished for 15 minutes while he was still standing there. Dean Matthews is 38. He has patrolled the border 11 years. He trusted maps and procedure. He did not trust ghosts or aliens. Then October 3rd, 2024 arrived. Route 87 cuts through West Texas desert. Night there feels endless. Dean patrolled with a partner. Near midnight, a low hum rose southward. It pulsed in steady beats, then stopped. At 2:14 a.m., Dean found Unit 23 on the shoulder. The emergency lights pulsed in steady beats. The driver door stood open into dry wind. The cab was empty and too quiet. The engine block still felt warm. The odometer perfectly clean. Dean stared at the digits, then checked again. It was still 0, with no scratches. He checked the dash for dust lines. Everything looked reset, not replaced. The fuel gauge sat at half, like normal. The seatbelt hung straight and untouched. The steering wheel felt cool, not human warm. Dean searched the dirt near the door. No boot prints circled the cab. No drag marks crossed the sand. No scuffle marks cut the gravel. The road shoulder looked undisturbed. Even pebbles sat in neat clusters. His radio showed no bars at all. His phone showed no service either. The hum rose from the south again. It pulsed 3 times, then died. Dean opened the glove box and found the dash camera. He carried it to the patrol laptop. The file played with a clean timestamp. 2 officers stopped for strange road lights. One stepped out and faced the darkness. The other opened the door to follow. Then the image turned pure white for 47 seconds. No motion lines, no glare, just white. The audio held only a deep echo. It repeated like a well. Slow and hollow. The echo never matched their footsteps. When the picture returned, both were gone. The open door remained on screen. The emergency lights still flashed outside. The timestamp jumped forward without warning. Logs showed 6 missing minutes around that gap. Dean called dispatch and reported every detail. Dispatch said Dean vanished for 15 minutes. Dean checked his own watch and doubted it. He felt only 10 minutes pass, at most. Dean was forced onto leave after the roadside find. A plain envelope reached his home. No return address. Inside were copied reports and clipped photos. 17 cases across 8 years. Vehicles reset to impossible data. Radios dead, GPS wrong, and missing time. Some survivors carried geometric marks. Most described the same low hum. Many described lights moving against physics. A few described tall, thin beams near the lights. Large heads appeared in every account. Dean tried to dismiss it as rumor, yet Unit 23 matched the pages too well. 3 weeks later, the pattern found Dean again. He worked a different sector that night. His radio died mid-sentence. His GPS reset to unfamiliar coordinates. The hum returned and pressed into his teeth. 3 lights appeared off the roadway, holding formation. Dean counted seconds to stay anchored. His watch showed 4 minutes of tracking. His body felt less than 1 minute. Then the lights vanished at impossible speed. Dean stopped waiting for permission after that. He began investigating alone. He built a monitoring post at mile marker 43. He used hardened gear, backup power, and paper logs. On November 17th, intensity spiked hard. 7 lights formed a ring around his position. Radios failed at once, then stayed dead. The echo hid inside his head, not ears. 1 light dropped 20 feet away. A thin figure stood inside the glow. Upright and too tall. A question pressed into his mind. Do you understand? Dean could not answer fast enough. Then he lost 15 minutes of real time. Tests later found rare earths in his blood. Unit 23 never returned. The missing list grew anyway. 37 became 45. Then the numbers stopped being shared aloud. Dean kept their last location pinned on a paper map, a small X that never moved. He stopped telling himself it was accidents and errors. Something took people off Route 87, and it did it on purpose. Dean went back to Route 87 alone and stayed there. He drove the same loop at the same hours, week after week, as if routine could force a pattern to show itself. He logged everything with paper and mechanical tools, not just electronics. He wrote down each hum pulse, each radio blackout, each GPS reset, each moment his watch disagreed with the trot clock. He started leaving markers on the shoulder, then checking them later. Not once did he find a normal explanation that fit all the data. Then the UFO stopped hiding. One night the hum rose and the air went thick, and a craft appeared over the roadway like it had been there all along. It was huge, wider than the highway, a dark shape with no visible seams. It hovered without wind wash, without engine sound, without heat shimmer. Lights ran along its underside in clean geometric lines, not blinking like aircraft, but sliding like a signal. Dean watched it through the windshield, hands locked on the wheel, and the odometer flashed 0 miles again for 2 seconds before returning. On another night, the craft came lower, and Dean saw movement inside the light, not just glare. A tall alien figure stood within the glow beside his truck, human-shaped but too thin, head too large, eyes too wide to belong to any person. It did not walk in from the desert. It was simply there when the light arrived. Dean heard a voice in his mind, calm and precise, asking the same question from his earlier encounter. Do you understand? His mouth went dry. He tried to speak out loud and his radio crackled with the words instead, as if his thoughts were being routed through the speaker. The encounters multiplied. 3 escort lights would sweep ahead of his patrol route, then stop and hold formation, guiding him toward a spot on the shoulder. When Dean slowed, the UFO would appear above, and the desert would turn silent. He saw 2 more alien figures beside the road, standing in a line like survey posts. He forced himself to look long enough to describe them, then look away long enough to stay functional. Each time, time slipped. His watch would jump ahead, his body would feel only seconds. After one blackout, he found a fresh geometric mark on his forearm, sharp-edged and pale, like a pattern pressed under the skin. His boots carried fine white dust that did not match any local soil. Dean realized the missing minutes were not empty. They were filled with contact he could not fully remember. The dash cam whiteout was not glare. It was a controlled screen, a deliberate cut. The odometer 0 was not a glitch. It was a reset to baseline before they ran the next test. Unit 23 remains unsolved. The desert keeps its secrets, and Route 87 keeps its silence. Dean still patrols at night, waiting for the next hum pulse and the next impossible reset. Share your theory below, then hit like and subscribe so you do not miss the next report.
In Washington, D.C., Charlotte receives a sealed file marked Human Trials. The footage shows an alien standing beside a crashed UFO. The next page lists Charlotte as the new clearance holder. Charlotte works inside a quiet federal office. She audits black budget programs and writes compliance summaries. She believes paperwork cannot hide reality forever. The file begins with October 3rd, 2024. A UFO loses control above the Nevada desert. It falls fast and silent near Area 51. A lone alien exits the wrecked craft. It staggers on thin legs and scans the dark horizon. A patrol spotlight finds it before it can run. Recovery teams arrive within minutes. They seal the sand with floodlights. They sweep for debris and footprints. The UFO lies half buried and smoking. The alien stands near the torn hull. It sways, then steadies. It does not run. It watches the perimeter lights. Its eyes track each moving person. A patrol spotlight pins the alien. The alien freezes. A handler shouts simple commands. The alien tilts its head, almost curious. The first shot is not a bullet. It is a net. The net hits and tightens. The alien falls without a sound. No scream, no struggle. They move fast after that. A sealed stretcher rolls in. The alien is wrapped and locked. The stretcher is tagged as equipment. Engineers cut free major UFO panels. They label each piece. They pack them into foam crates. The crates are loaded under canvas. The convoy leaves before dawn. Trucks travel without headlights. Radios use coded bursts. Every mile marker is logged by hand. The craft enters a hangar below the runway. The doors close without echoes. The alien enters a white lab corridor. Initial tests begin immediately. Scanners sweep bone and tissue. Blood is drawn with robotic arms. Neural probes map unfamiliar rhythms. Engineers study the UFO core. They remove plates and fasteners. Some parts refuse to separate. Some parts feel warm and alive. Charlotte reads the earliest logs in DC. She sees the same line often. Subject shows no resistance. Subject maintains steady gaze. She flags that detail and requests raw footage. She wants uncut time codes. She wants badge scans and door logs. The first files arrive with gaps. Cameras jump forward without alerts. Badge scans repeat in perfect loops. Charlotte feels a cold certainty. She requests a field visit. The approval arrives too fast. It arrives within 1 hour. She books a flight that same morning. Charlotte enters the facility as an observer. She signs forms she cannot copy. She walks through doors with no labels. The air smells like metal. She watches the alien through thick glass. Its skin reflects light with wet sheen. Its chest rises with slow precision. Its eyes never blink. Staff speaks softly near the room. They repeat the same phrases daily. They forget questions after answering. They move like synchronized clocks. Charlotte reviews the experiment schedule. Every test is harsh and exact, yet every change favors the alien. Sedatives are reduced too soon. The alien sits upright by week 2. It lifts its arms with ease. By week 3, its vitals look normal. The staff call it recovery. Charlotte calls it acceleration. She compares lab notes across days. A missing line returns in another file. The handwriting does not match. She visits the hangar next. The UFO looks less damaged now. Weld lines vanish between frames. Cracks appear smooth by morning. Engineers claim they repaired it. Their work orders lack tool lists. Their diagrams repeat strange symbols. Nobody can explain the shapes. Charlotte tests the staff with small questions. She asks who approved the new plan. 3 people answer the same sentence. She asks why the alien never resists. A guard says it is cooperative. Charlotte watches the guard blink twice, then smile. She asks for one change. She wants the alien left alone. The request is approved fast. It is approved within 1 hour. That night, power dips for 8 seconds. Monitors turn white across the wing. When video returns, the alien is standing. No door opens during the white gap. No alarm triggers. No guard moves on camera. The alien is simply closer to the glass. Charlotte feels pressure behind her eyes. A thought arrives without sound. It asks her about control and direction. She writes one word in her notebook: influence. Her pen scratches too hard. She does not look away from the glass. After that night, the facility mood curdles. The hangar shifts into constant work, but the people doing it look worse each day. Engineers arrive early and leave late, yet their faces slacken. Conversations shrink into mutters. Tempers flare over small mistakes. Coffee cups stack up. Someone cries in a stairwell and claims it is allergies. Charlotte watches the symbols spread anyway. Not as neat rituals, but as absent-minded scribbles. The shapes appear on napkins, on whiteboards, on the edges of reports. They show up in the margins of her own drafts, even when she is sure she did not draw them. Nobody argues about what they mean anymore. People only say they cannot sleep. The UFO hum returns at irregular hours, low and clean, and it makes everyone irritable. Tools vibrate on benches. A metal tray creeps a few inches across a table. Fluorescent lights flicker, then stay dimmer than before. The hangar air feels heavier near the craft, like pressure at depth. Charlotte realizes the control is already in place. It is not marching orders, it is erosion. Attention pulled, mood dragged down, thinking narrowed, until people choose the same path because the alternatives feel exhausting. She sees it in meetings, in the way questions die on tongues, in the way everyone stops looking directly at the craft, yet keeps working on it. Observation windows extended, security rotations thinned. The official reason is efficiency. The real effect is access. Inside the lab, the alien walks now. It moves with slow economy and touches walls as if reading them. It pauses at corners, then turns its head as if listening to signals inside the building. The staff around it look hollowed out, more tired than afraid, as if their fear has been used up. Charlotte catches the truth before the next white screen. The craft is not being repaired by human insight. Humans are being guided into repairing it. The alien does not need to force them. It only needs to keep them worn down and focused. That same night, the sky changes early. Over the desert beyond the facility, lights appear high and steady. Not one matches any known aircraft. They arrive in groups and hold perfect positions. The hangar cameras catch their reflections on the UFO skin, sliding like cold stars across wet metal. Alarms should rise. Instead, the building sinks into a deeper quiet. People stop talking. Some sit down where they stand. A guard stares at a blank wall and breathes through his mouth. Charlotte walks into the hangar and stands close enough to feel the hum in her bones. The UFO surface looks seamless now, almost alive, and the symbols on the floor seem to point toward her shoes. A shadow touches her shoulder before she hears a step. She turns and sees the alien behind her, closer than the glass should allow. Its eyes hold her with calm precision. A long finger presses lightly against her forearm. The contact is cold, then warm, then numb. Charlotte cannot move at first. The hum drops out. In the silence, her pulse sounds loud and wrong. The alien does not speak aloud. Meaning arrives anyway, heavy and intimate, as if placed inside her body. The lights above the facility hold their formation, waiting. After that week, Charlotte is back in DC and looks almost normal. She stands at windows without blinking and rubs the spot on her forearm. Her phone fills with upward static photos she does not remember taking. When the city sky flickers with distant lights, her face goes blank. Share your theory below, then hit like and subscribe so you do not miss the next report. Your DNA is not your own, and your memories are a lie. Tonight, we expose the shocking truth behind the hybridization agenda. Camille, a woman whose life was irrevocably altered by non-human intelligence, is a reluctant witness. Her testimony suggests the UFO experience is not random, but part of a cold, calculated, multi-generational genetic agenda. This program, which we define as the hybridization agenda, the systematic, hidden genetic engineering and creation of a new species using the human genome, is far closer than most realize. As Camille herself states, "It didn't change my life, it became my life." We will now examine the two key encounters that defined her ordeal. Camille's earliest memories were not of innocence, but of disorientation and profound loss. Her trauma began with seemingly innocuous events that later became anchors of her ordeal. She recalls invisible visitations, an unseen, two-legged entity jumping onto her chest in the middle of the night. These were precursors to the major trauma. One of her core memories is waking up on a beach in the dead of night, miles from home, wearing only her underwear. Her father, finding her missing, had to unlock a series of deadbolts she physically could not manipulate. For years, she buried this event as a nightmare or sleepwalking incident. It wasn't until therapy with hypnotherapist Barbara Lamb that the truth was uncovered. They had placed her there. She was an object of study, returned to her environment once the clinical process was complete. This realization fractured her perception of reality, plunging her into a lifelong obsession. The trauma was compounded by missing time. Around age 8, Camille experienced the telltale signs, hearing a high-pitched frequency, walking down her hallway, and then nothing. Hours later, she would be back in bed with zero recollection. This chronological scar drove her to seek answers, realizing her life was being manipulated and edited without her knowledge. Under deep hypnotic regression, the scope of her involvement in the hybridization agenda became clear. Camille describes an intense, cold light solidifying into a column of powerful blue energy. This non-physical slide pulled her upward, effortlessly penetrating solid matter. The phenomenon supports the interdimensional hypothesis. The beings are not traveling vast distances, but shifting dimensions, materializing and vanishing instantly. Aboard the craft, the environment was designed to disable the human mind. Camille describes a vast, white, seamless room devoid of corners or reference points. The light emanated from the walls themselves. This architectural deception induced disorientation and prevented spatial orientation. The beings were standard grays, tall, with pale, parchment-like skin stretched over disproportionately large heads. Their eyes were massive, black, insect-like orbs, devoid of iris or pupil. Camille stresses they were not malevolent, but non-empathetic, operating with cold clinical detachment. The central horror was the procedure itself. Camille was secured on a thin, cold table that molded to her body. A mechanical arm, ending in a polished gynecological instrument, harvested the fetus she was unaware she carried, a tiny walnut-sized life. This systematic collection of genetic material, specifically from the Rh-negative bloodline, is theorized as the seed of the human genetic experiment. Camille was a biological resource. As the procedure concluded, physical pain vanished, replaced by synthetic comfort. A mechanical voice implanted phrases in her psyche. The final one, "We are always sending you love." This post-hypnotic trigger neutralized trauma and ensured compliance, confirming a long-term, meticulously planned agenda. Years later, armed with the knowledge of her own engineering, Camille refused to remain a passive victim. She decided to engage directly, moving from an abductee to a participant, a process known as CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Camille traveled to a remote desert location, joining a group focused on conscious contact. She wasn't relying on chance, she was relying on frequency. She focused her intent not on fear, but on confrontation, using her decoded psychological trigger as a kind of reverse password. The pressure was immense. Camille waited, skeptical, nearly giving up. At a moment of psychological surrender, the response was immediate and physically violent. Crack! A concussive burst of sound directly overhead, snapping the desert silence. This was immediately followed by the spontaneous materialization of a dense, metallic gray mist. This sudden, physical rupture of the atmosphere proved the dimensional nature of their travel. From the mist, a sleek, white, V-shaped craft slid out, silently descending to a low altitude. This object was enormous, yet completely silent. The key detail, the one that validated her entire experience, was its anatomy. Underneath the wings, there were 3 translucent amber spherical objects, 6 in total, resembling large fluid-filled suction cups. These were not lights. Camille testified that they glowed and pulsed in perfect rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. She was witnessing the visible heartbeat of a living machine. This craft was a fusion of organic biology and advanced technology, a biotech hybrid, the mechanical mirror of the genetic hybridization program taking place in the vats. The craft itself confirmed the agenda. The V-craft hovered for a brief, tense period, bathing Camille's location in a silent field of energy. It was observing, acknowledging the frequency of the summons. It wasn't engaging in dialogue, it was performing an ID confirmation. Having verified the source of the communication, the craft then shimmered, warped, and vanished instantly, folding out of our dimensional space. Camille's conscious call had been received, cataloged, and acknowledged by the system. She was now confirmed as an active carrier and a known entity within the protocol. Camille's encounters reveal the chilling truth of the agenda. The focus on the Rh-negative bloodline is key. It is their genetic antidote. The Greys, ancient and advanced, face terminal genetic collapse. Abductions are clinical attempts at self-preservation, using dimensional technology to access their vital resource. The program has shifted from harvesting to deployment. Hybrids, engineered for human compatibility and total compliance, are designed to infiltrate positions of power. The phrase, "we are always sending you love," is a sinister command frequency, ensuring engineered consent. The abduction phase is complete. The occupation phase is imminent. Camille's testimony closes the loop. The Greys are not invaders, but a desperate species reclaiming the planet they ceded millennia ago. Abductions cultivate the new ruling class. Camille is a living witness, and her story is our only defense. The question is existential. How will we respond to a silent genetic takeover? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe Camille's account is evidence of a desperate eugenics program or an elaborate psychological weapon? Like and subscribe for more deep dives into the unexplained. They say the universe is silent, but that's a lie. Sometimes, in the dead of night, it whispers low, cold, and uncomfortably close to your window. And on a few terrifying nights in American history, people swear that whisper became something real, something watching from the tree line, something stepping toward them with intentions no human could predict. These aren't stories about distant lights in the sky. These are the nights when the unknown didn't just appear. It advanced, lifting one man into a beam of light and trapping an entire family inside their own home. And the most chilling part is this: if it happened to them, it could happen to any of us. In the annals of UFO lore, countless testimonies whisper of alien encounters, but few stories carry the weight, the terror, and the paradox of human resistance. Tonight, we examine 2 of the most extraordinary reports in UFO history, cases in which ordinary people claim they were not only visited by non-human intelligences, but forced to fight for their lives. These are not tales of passive observers. These are battles. First, the forest near Snowflake, Arizona, where a logger named Travis Walton vanished under a beam of blue-green light for nearly 5 days. Second, a humble farmhouse in Kentucky, 1955, where a family believed they were besieged by small, shadowy beings and fired their guns at them for hours. Whether hoax or horror, their claims continue to cast a long shadow over what we think we know about alien contact. On the night of November 5, 1975, Travis Walton, a 22-year-old logger, was returning home with his crew from the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. His life until that moment had been one of sweat and timber, of silent woods and creaking trucks. But that night, his world changed forever. As Walton and his 6 co-workers drove along a remote dirt road, they noticed a strange glow ahead in the trees, a metallic disc that hummed into the darkness, casting an unnatural light. According to Walton's later testimony, he stepped out of the truck, drawn by curiosity, and approached the object. The air was heavy with tension. Suddenly, a beam of blue-green light shot from the craft, striking him and hurling him backward. He screamed, and then nothing. His terrified coworkers fled the scene. They drove away in panic, convinced their friend was dead, or worse. When they dared to return, Walton was gone. For 5 days and 6 hours, Travis Walton was missing. A frantic search ensued. Helicopters scoured the forest, search dogs combed the land, and law enforcement questioned his distraught crew. Some whispered of murder, others of madness. When he finally returned on the roadside near Heber, Arizona, he was disoriented, dehydrated, and claimed he had been aboard the very craft that had struck him. Inside that strange ship, Walton said, was a chamber unlike any human architecture. Smooth metallic walls, harsh flickering light, and figures that seemed human but not. 3 beings stood nearby, bald, pale-skinned, and with enormous luminous eyes. Walton described a rectangular contraption across his torso, attached to his body as though part of some alien apparatus. He tried to resist. He stood on a table, seized what looked like a glass cylinder, threatened them, but they did not react as simple animals would. Instead, they maintained a sinister calm. He remembered being taken through narrow corridors, past other disc-shaped crafts parked in a vast hangar. At one point, he blacked out. When he came to, he found himself walking along a deserted road. Behind him, the saucer floated away in silence. Travis's return raised as many questions as his disappearance. He lost weight, he appeared traumatized. He claimed he had been watched, even studied. Multiple polygraph tests followed, and many believe he told the truth. Skeptics call it hoax, but to believers, Walton's story remains among the most credible alien abductions ever recorded. His tale became legend and a movie, Fire in the Sky. But beyond cinema, these are not cinematic fiction. This is a man who insists he survived something no one around him understood. On a sultry August night in 1955, in a rural corner of Christian County, Kentucky, a farmhouse stood quietly under the stars. Inside lived the Sutton family and a handful of carnival workers, gathered for relaxation, stories, and a card game. But by the time the moon had climbed high, the night would turn into something none of them could have imagined. Billy Ray Taylor, one of the visitors, ventured outside to fetch water. Eyes turned skyward, he reported seeing a blazing silvery object streak across the sky, trailing colors like a rainbow. Soon, others joined the watch, and what they witnessed crashed into their lives forever. Figures, small, dark, and unearthly, crept near the windows and doors of the farmhouse. Chaos followed. The family grabbed guns. Elmer Sutton, Billy Ray, and others fired repeatedly. They said up to 12 to 15 little beings appeared, spindly, with claw-like hands, pointed ears, and glowing eyes. Bullets rang out into the night. But according to the witnesses, the creatures were impervious. The shots seemed to clang against some metallic surface. When someone re-entered a window, another figure would float away. When they ran outside to confront them, the beings simply vanished into the forest. For nearly 4 hours, the farmhouse rang with gunfire and terror. Children wept. Shots echoed. Finally, the family fled to the Hopkinsville police station, exhausted and trembling, certain they had survived something alien and hostile. When law enforcement arrived, they found no bodies, no blood, no alien remains. What they did find, bullet holes in screens and windows, shattered wood, and a family changed forever. To many, the Kelly Hopkinsville incident remains one of the most baffling and credible close encounters. Investigators later noted the fear of the family was genuine. Officers described witnesses with elevated pulses and expressions of genuine terror. Skeptics later offered mundane explanations, but for those who lived it, the night was real. These two stories, though decades apart and thousands of miles distant, share a chilling symmetry. Common men and women claiming close contact with unknown non-human intelligences and responding not with passivity but with defiance. In Walton's case, his hostility was internal. He resisted, threatened, tried to make sense of what was happening. He refused to lie down quietly. That very act of defiance, standing, raising an object, speaking, betrays a conviction that what he encountered was not merely a dream. In Kentucky, the Sutton family's reaction was raw, visceral. Guns raised, hearts pounding, bullets flying into the darkness. Their perceived aggressors did not retreat politely. They remained implacable, even mocking, as though testing the family's willpower. That similarity matters. In both narratives, these are not passive victims. These are humans who believed they were under siege and acted to survive. Could both stories be hoaxes, embellished by time and retold by believers? Absolutely. Skeptics on the Walton encounter point to disputed polygraphs or internal conflicts. In the Hopkinsville case, some suggest misidentified wildlife, excited imaginations, or mass hysteria. Yet, hoax or truth, these claims left a mark. Travis Walton's disappearance and return remains one of the most documented abductions in UFO history. The Kelly-Hopkinsville siege became legend, spawning UFO folklore, festivals, and debates that endure. They force us to ask, what if contact is not always benevolent? What if the other does not seek peace but study or control? And what of humanity's response when pushed to its limits? If one thing emerges from these stories, it is this: the unknown does not always come in whispers. Sometimes it crashes into our world, and when it does, we fight. Comment your thoughts below, share your own experiences, and subscribe to continue exploring the unknown with us. Keep watching the skies. Can you believe this? A massive animal weighing over a ton is found dead, but at the scene, there isn't a single drop of blood left. It didn't just bleed out. 100% of the blood in its body was completely drained. Welcome to one of the greatest mysteries of modern history: cattle mutilation. This isn't science fiction. It started back in the 1970s, and believe me, it's coming back stronger than ever in 2024. So who's behind it? Aliens, the US, government, or some kind of dark spiritual force? Let's try to find the answer. A wolf or a mountain lion leaves a mess. They tear flesh, they drag the body, and they leave blood splattered across the grass. But in these cases, the scene is sterile. It is a surgical theater in the middle of a muddy pasture. The most baffling and consistent characteristic, the signature of these killings, is the blood. We are talking about full-grown bulls and cows, animals containing gallons of fluid, found completely exsanguinated. There is no pool of blood on the ground. There are no tracks leading away. In many necropsy reports, pathologists have noted that there isn't even a single blood cell left in the capillaries. To achieve this level of extraction requires industrial-grade pumps and time, equipment that simply shouldn't exist in the dark silence of a farm field. Then there are the injuries themselves, which are grotesque yet clinically precise. The attackers always target specific soft tissues. The eyes are cored out of their sockets, the ears are removed, and the tongue is sliced off deep from the throat, often pulled out through an incision in the neck that shouldn't be physically possible. Frequently, the reproductive organs are excised with clean, circular cuts. These aren't rips caused by teeth. They are smooth, microscopic incisions. Under lab analysis, the tissue often shows signs of high-heat cauterization, suggesting the use of a laser-like instrument that cuts and seals the wound simultaneously to prevent bleeding. In some of the most disturbing cases, investigators have found perfect holes drilled into the animal's jaw, extending deep into the brain case, through which the entire brain and eyeballs appear to have been suctioned out. No known animal on Earth possesses the ability to drill through bone and extract a brain without crushing the skull. We need to look at the data coming out of Australia. Reports of unexplained stock mutilations down under go all the way back to the 1950s, decades before the FBI ever opened a file in the US. This shatters the idea that this is a modern copycat phenomenon. In Australia, the victims weren't just cattle. Sheep were, and still are, primary targets. The modus operandi is identical: the surgical removal of the jaw, the missing tongue, the lack of blood. The fact that this was happening in the 1950s on a completely different continent tells us that whatever intelligence is behind this has been operating globally for nearly a century. Furthermore, if we shift our gaze to South America, the numbers are staggering and, frankly, criminally underreported by the Western press. Since the year 2000, there have been estimates of anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 confirmed cases of animal mutilation across the continent. Argentina, Brazil, and Chile have been absolute hotspots for this activity. 3,000 cases. Let that number sink in. That is not a series of isolated pranks. That is a systematic operation. In these South American cases, the details remain hauntingly consistent with what we see in Oregon and Utah. The animals are stripped of their senses, eyes, ears, tongue, and drained of fluid. The sheer volume of cases in South America suggests that this isn't just a random sampling. It looks like a harvest. The fact that the mainstream news rarely covers the international scope of this issue makes you wonder if there's a deliberate attempt to keep the public thinking this is just a quirky American ghost story, rather than a worldwide intrusion. When you combine the Australian historical data regarding sheep with the massive volume of South American cattle cases, the American-centric theory falls apart, leaving us with something much more vast and frightening. It implies that the entire planet is being used as a biological laboratory by an entity that views borders as irrelevant. Despite this global history, we cannot ignore the massive spike that has just occurred in the United States. Fast forward to late 2024. The silence has been broken. On December 28, 2024, reports began flooding in, specifically from the state of Oregon. We are seeing a resurgence that rivals the panic of the 1970s. Local authorities in Oregon, specifically in places like Grant County, are overwhelmed. We aren't talking about one or two cows. We are talking about hundreds of calls to police stations from different farms and ranches over the last few months. The timing is suspicious, and the intensity is escalating. One recent case involved a bull that was killed and mutilated with classic mutilation hallmarks. The owner described a scene that defied logic: a prize bull, dead, hollowed out, with no tracks leading to or from the body. What makes the 2024 wave different from the 1970s is our observational technology. Back then, it was just word of mouth. Now, we are starting to see a correlation that can no longer be dismissed: the direct presence of UFOs. Over the past 3 months, coinciding exactly with this spike in cattle deaths, there have been hundreds of sightings of unidentified flying objects over these specific farming regions. These aren't your typical silver saucers. The descriptions are consistent: bright orange orbs, sometimes black objects that glow with an orange halo, hovering silently over the livestock. One rancher provided a testimony that gives us a chilling glimpse into the high-tech nature of these encounters. He described seeing a bright orange light, about the size of a beach ball, floating just above the ground near his herd. This wasn't a drone. It made absolutely no sound. No humming, no engine noise, just dead silence. As he watched, this orb split into two separate objects of the same size. It defies the laws of physics. Conservation of mass doesn't work that way, yet he watched it happen. One of the orbs then shot off toward the north, accelerating from 0 to thousands of miles per hour in a split second, vanishing instantly. Minutes later, he checked his herd and found his steer mutilated. When you combine the eyewitness accounts of these silent, splitting orbs with the surgical precision found on the animals, the conclusion becomes very difficult to avoid. This technology is not from a local coyote pack, and it certainly doesn't look like standard human aircraft. This brings us to the inevitable question: who is doing this? The theories generally fall into 3 camps. The first, and the one that seems to fit the physical evidence best, is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The correlation between the orange orbs and the dead cattle is too strong to ignore. The theory posits that these beings are conducting biological monitoring. Why the soft tissues? Why the eyes and tongues? Scientists speculate that these are the areas where genetic material and environmental toxins are most concentrated. If you were an alien species monitoring the health of this planet, cows are the perfect biological bellwether. They are everywhere. They eat the grass. They are part of the human food supply. The complete draining of blood could be for the manufacturing of a nutrient or fuel we don't understand. The technology displayed, including silent propulsion, laser cutters, and the ability to lift 2-ton animals without tracks, points to a capability far beyond current human science. However, we cannot rule out the second theory, the government or military-industrial complex. This theory suggests we are being deceived by our own leaders. Proponents argue that the aliens are a cover story to mask illegal testing of biological weapons. Could these mutilations be a way of tracking prions like mad cow disease or testing new nerve agents? The argument is that if the government were doing this, they would want you to blame Martians. It's the perfect camouflage. If a rancher says the government killed my cow, people listen. If he says a UFO killed my cow, he gets laughed at. It's a convenient way to discredit witnesses. Then there is the third angle, the occult and spiritual theory. In the 70s, newspapers blamed devil worshippers. While cultists usually leave a mess, the spiritual angle has persisted. Many view these entities not as space travelers, but as interdimensional beings, what the Bible might call fallen angels or demons. They point to the cruelty and the mockery of nature involved in these mutilations as inherently evil. They argue that these entities are harvesting energy or fear, and that the increase in activity in 2024 is a precursor to a major spiritual event, or the rise of the Antichrist. Cultural products like the video game Grey Hill Incident are starting to reflect this trauma, allowing players to experience the terror of a ranch invasion. But for the farmers in Oregon, this is no game. After analyzing the bloodless corpses, the surgical precision, and the global history from Australian sheep to South American cattle, one nagging question remains. While this is a global phenomenon, why does the sheer intensity of the high strangeness seem to concentrate so heavily on the United States during specific windows of time? Why Oregon? Why now? Is there something specific about the geography of the American West? Or is the United States simply the primary stage for a contact event that is slowly escalating? It feels like a message is being sent. When you leave a mutilated cow out in a field, unable to be eaten by nature, stripped of its eyes and blood, you are leaving a billboard. You are saying, "We can do this and you cannot stop us." The rise in cases in late 2024 suggests that whatever this program is, it is accelerating. The quiet years might be over. As we move further into this decade, we might be approaching a disclosure event not by government admission, but by the undeniable volume of evidence piling up in our pastures. So what do you think? Are the 3,000 cases in South America proof of an alien harvest? Is the Australian history proof of a century-long experiment? Or is this a government psychological operation? The evidence is there for anyone brave enough to look. If you live in these rural areas, keep your eyes on the sky. And if you see those orange lights, lock your doors. Because whatever is out there, it's hungry, it's precise, and it is not asking for permission. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark corners of our reality and want to stay updated on the weirdest phenomena happening around the globe, from the paranormal to the unexplained, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a like if you want to see more investigations like this. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay safe, and watch the skies.